Greetings and salutations. I am the Baron Strad von Zarovich, son of King Barov and Queen Ravanovia, slayer of dragons, Count of Barovia, bane of the Dusk Elves, patron of the Vistani, unifier of tribes, master of the night and all of its creatures. I am the ancient. I am the land. Welcome to Barovia. Today's video, the Charmed Condition, how to run it, how to roleplay it, how it works. Failing your wisdom saving throw against the vampire Strahd, you are now subject to the Charmed Condition. Confused about conditions in D&D 5e? Well, you should be. I'm Russell Kirkby and this is D&D 5e Fundamentals on Sidariel. Right now we're going through all 15 5e conditions: blinded, charmed, deafened, exhausted, frightened, grappled, incapacitated, invisible, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, restrained, stunned, unconscious, and with the sole exception of invisible, they're all bad for you. If you disagree with me about how something might work, I'd love to hear your perspective so that we can all learn something together. Now today we're going to look at the Charmed Condition, what that means according to the rules, how to roleplay being charmed either as a player or as an NPC, and then finally we're going to take a look at the skills and abilities most impacted by the Charmed Condition. And remember, every time you do not subscribe to this channel, another baby owlbear dies at the hands of an evil cultist, and you can prevent these atrocities by simply clicking the big red button and turning on the notifications bell below. So you failed your wisdom saving throw and you've been charmed. Now, depending on the spell, the caster, the magic item, or whatever the effect is that has caused this can last anywhere from a few seconds to a few years, and in some cases there's not a lot you can do about it without some high-level help. Note, there are very few spells that will remove the Charmed Condition. According to my research, they include the level 2 spell, Calm Emotions, the level 5 spells, Dispel Evil and Good, and Greater Restoration, and finally a level 8 spell for bards only, Power Word Heal. If you know of any other ways to instantly remove a charm, drop it in the comments below. Now, upon being charmed, your first instinct might be to start complaining that the DM has taken away your agency. This is a role-playing game and we are telling a story. My first suggestion to a player who has just been struck with the Charmed Condition, or any negative condition really, is to embrace it. Roleplay it. Ask yourself, how does my character act when he or she is charmed? Do you begin to flirt with the charmer? Do you become all shy? Do you suddenly become very helpful, protective? Do you fall in love? Maybe you simply become agreeable to the charmer, a sort of shift of attitude where moments ago you might have been suspicious, now you're open and listening to the charmer's suggestions. In any case, there are a couple of game mechanics worth considering. Appendix A of the Player's Handbook on page 290 states that a charmed creature cannot attack the charmer or target the charmer with harmful abilities or magical effects. It goes on to say that the charmer has advantage on all ability checks interacting socially with the creature. Now, this all seems fairly straightforward. Charmed creatures can't really attack the charmer, and the charmer gets advantage to social skill checks. But my question to you is this: what constitutes a social check? When I was researching this video, I noticed that the first level spell Animal Friendship caused the Charmed Condition upon animals, and this raises the question to me as to whether or not you can persuade an animal using a social check. Bolting through the forest on your friend's stubborn mule, Francis, pursued by 4 horsemen bedecked in the colours of the usurper king's black guard. The mule wants to bolt off into the countryside, but you absolutely must make the next jump over the stone wall ahead, or your adventuring days may well be over. One might argue that this should in fact be an animal handling check. If you can't talk to it, can you actually persuade it to do anything? Is it persuasion? In which case, this spell might be a waste of a good spell slot. On the other hand, using Animal Friendship to intimidate a hungry bear might prove more fruitful. So what do we consider a social skill check in D&D 5e? Intimidation, after all, doesn't even require language. Intimidating a bear using Animal Friendship, social skill check? Does that even make sense? Well, if you ask me, and I'm just one DM, the only skill checks that you can get advantage on with the Charmed Condition are going to be Deception, Insight, standard intimidation checks that use Charisma and not Strength, performance checks, and finally Persuasion checks. That's a total of 5 skill checks. Tell me in the comments below if you can think of a reason why someone might get advantage on a skill check that I didn't include here. And while you're there, make a saving throw against my natural charm to see if you can avoid clicking subscribe. Click the big red button and the bell. Yes, you must subscribe. It is in your best interests to subscribe. It is your destiny. Haha, got you that time, didn't I? Yeah, finally got you. Alright, back to business. Now, let's talk about these 5 skill checks, starting with deception. Deception is clearly a social skill. One of the main advantages, after all, of charming someone is getting them to believe your lies. Come, Adric, you must give me the hammer. Your fate and the fate of your companions depends upon it. Right, so this could very well be a big, fat, made-up lie. This might be some arch-fae trying to steal your shit. They may even modify your memories afterwards so that you don't remember them doing it. That's especially mean. But in any case, I believe that deception is a social check and thus should gain advantage with the charmed condition. Insight. While the charmed creature is not in a position to lie easily, they may do so in order to please the charmer, and insight will help determine the charmed individual's true intentions. This also includes picking up on their body language and subtle social clues that may give away their next move. Thus, I would give advantage to the charmer for most insight checks. Now, intimidation is a kind of an anti-social skill actually in real life. The transition between these contrasting states may well throw someone off guard, just enough to give the charmer an unexpected edge. However, this kind of passive-aggressive behavior may only work once. Some DMs may rule that intimidation could cause the charmed effect to come to a halting end, putting a stop to any further shenanigans. You could find that trying to persuade someone to do something using charisma after hinting at a violent and sticky end might not play out too well. Now, this might be a good place to point out that many DMs and storytellers, myself included, will often use a sliding scale where a social encounter has more in common with a combat scene with multiple checks and challenges. These various checks may shift the NPC's attitude in either direction along an axis, with hostile at one end and awestruck at the other. Now, depending on the DM, this axis might include a number of other states along the way, such as antagonistic, indifferent, curious, friendly, and so on, before finally causing the NPC to become totally awestruck. An NPC might start out as hostile and be moved by a number of grueling skill checks to become friendly and helpful. Some DMs might expect you to at least try and roleplay your way through this ordeal. Others might be satisfied to run the scene mechanically. Personally, I like to make a check first and then roleplay towards the outcome, knowing the result. This gives everyone involved an idea of what to roleplay because you know where the scene is going, and that, for me, creates a kind of framework or scaffolding for the scene or the conversation to be played out or improvised. You want to enthrall the city guard with your story about how you met the Empress of Doors and Dagdagiel, while the rogue sneaks around behind and unlocks the jail cell so that your companions can escape. This is a performance check, and charming the guard will give you advantage on this roll in order to keep his attention focused directly and intently on you. Just remember, not all charms are equal. Some charms will leave the charmed person, monster, or beast aware that you have been messing with their heads, and that could lead to a somewhat hostile reaction once the charm wears off. You want to persuade the foreman of the dig site to grant you entry to the ancient Ostorian ruins. You're going to need a good argument. That argument will only have to be half as good when you have advantage. In some cases, this whole business of persuasion or gaining social advantage can be entirely moot. Higher level spells, such as Dominate Person, for example, basically will allow you to remote control the victim. If they fail their save, they become the puppet of the caster. There's no social skill checks involved. Just remember, what's good for the goose, however, is also good for the gander. What you can do to an NPC, the DM can do to you. Before we wrap up, I want to give you some final thoughts about role-playing conditions and making non-standard skill checks. Again, if you have a different idea or you can think of a way some other skill check might be considered social for the purposes of gaining advantage with a charm, drop me a line in the comments below. And also, while you're down there, think of the owlbears and hit subscribe. Because remember, every time you do not subscribe, another Albert dies at the hands of an evil cultist. Alright, so last but not least, when setting DCs for social skill checks, or if you're a player making a case for your character, I would also take into account a person's occupation, their reputation, their social standing. A clever artificer with a high intelligence is more likely to convince the king of a course of action involving multiple moving parts and myriad arcane forces than even the most charismatic rogue, who can probably talk very quickly but is likely to be caught using made-up words. Basically, I'm suggesting that certain characters will have an air of authority when it comes to certain subjects. No matter how good a talker you are, I'm still more likely to believe a wizard than a rogue when it comes to the subject of magic. Or probably any subject, really. Yeah. Alright, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on D&D 5e Fundamentals, where we will be covering the deafened condition. Yes, they are very evil, the cultists, and they kill the owlbears. They like to find people that do not subscribe to the channel, and they kill the owlbears. They murder the owlbears.
You know who this is?
No, who is this?
Toto? I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Have we got sound? Have we got sound? I can't tell if we've got sound.
That's me. Okay, that was me. I forgot to unmute us. Or at least unmute myself. Hello. Sorry. I was laughing when we just, transitioned from the intro screen because I just saw in our chat that one of our regulars, Upright Man, he was startled by our opening, which can be pretty loud. I've been told.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Startled.
Yeah.
The startled condition.
Well, yeah, that could be a condition. Well, at least you're awake, awake enough to hear our show.
Yes.
Howdy,
Welcome, Avery.
Internet. Yes. All right. So here we are, Russell and Geddes. We are here for tonight's episode 35. We're going to be talking about downtime activities, which I'm kind of excited about.
Right.
So yeah, if you're just joining us, we're a tabletop talk show. Oh, I'm hearing a little echo. Do you hear that? Is that just me?
Echo.
Maybe chat
echo.
here. Let me know if you're hearing an echo.
It should not be at my end.
Okay. We'll see how it goes. All right, but we're a tabletop talk show and podcast brought to you by Dungeon Studios. We go beyond live play and dive deep into every topic from session zeros to campaign heroes. With lively debates, thoughtful analysis, and plenty of laughs, our weekly podcast is the perfect companion for any D&D fan.
Yes.
At least we're both being heard, right?
Right. That's important. That is important.
So anyway, yeah, we stream live and interact with our chat on Facebook every Monday, 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. New Zealand time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So here we are, getting ready to talk about our topic for tonight. But before we do, for those of you longtime fans who may follow Doc on his socials, he posted a little something on the Dungeon Studios Facebook page saying, soon. A little teaser. Soon. He might be back soon. We've been saying it for a while, but...
Yes.
Soon.
We need him back. Come on,
Yes.
Doc. We need you. We need you to help carry the weight of this enormous show. The responsibility is crushing us.
Yes, you can tell we're very very crushed. We do miss him though. But he also
Oh yeah,
posted this really
there's also
funny
that.
picture. Yeah. He posted this really great picture that I think it's his son. They did this kind of drawing on concrete that looks kind of like they're opening a portal to another dimension. And so I'm pretty sure he's trying to find his way back, and that's why he's not with us tonight.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's a really cute picture too. I mean, if anybody's going to like open a portal to another dimension, it should be a little kid.
Right.
Yeah.
I
So,
agree. That's true, especially if it's a Stephen King book.
yeah. Oh god, kids are creepy.
Yeah.
They're like it's kids and old people are the worst when it comes to horror.
Right.
So,
Terrifying. All
that's
right.
why I'm just going to refuse to get old. Well, actually, maybe I'll lean
Yeah.
into it cuz then I can just be really creepy and I can get away
This,
with
is-
it.
this is right. The attraction to vampires is partly the immortality aspect.
Right.
You know. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. So, for those of you who are here with us, I just want to share a little reminder that if you like our show, if you know someone who likes our show, please like, share, and subscribe wherever you are listening to it, wherever you are joining us from.
Yep.
And yeah, I guess
We know
that's
we know you have Facebook groups, and we know
yeah.
you can share them there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some of them. So we're watching you.
Yeah.
There's no
Don't
judgment
worry
there.
about the group rules about like promotion or anything. Just promote us anyway.
Flagrant disrespect.
Yeah.
No, I'm not
So,
promoting that.
no, I know.
Not really. Not really.
Asterisk, we don't really mean that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about now. I feel like this should have been nerd news maybe a few weeks ago. I think it actually happened a few weeks ago. However, I think it only fell onto my nerd news radar for this week because there were a few folks that posted videos about it on YouTube this last week. And so all of a sudden it's kind of like getting brought to my attention. And that
Right.
is that Paizo has released their final version of the ORC, or the Open RPG Creative License. So if you have been following along, you will know that there was the whole Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons and Dragons, OGL fiasco. I feel like at this point, it's like you have to be living under a rock if you don't even know what that is at all. But if not, there's tons of sources. Just look up OGL fiasco and you will find all the information there. And in response to that, Paizo said, well, actually, I think it was a group of creatives, not just Paizo. I think it was like there was a bunch of them
Right.
that decided we're going to create our own open license, and
Right.
we're not gonna let one person own it. We're
Yeah.
going to like actually submit it to the Library of Congress and publish it so that it's out there in the public.
Right.
And so that has been submitted, which is pretty crazy.
Maybe Wizards of the Coast will join their OGL one day eventually.
Maybe. Oh god, that's so funny. But yeah, it's really interesting because I hadn't really paid attention to the folks, the groups, the small companies or what have you that said, "Yeah, we're behind you guys 100%. When you guys release this ORC, we will
Right.
create content for it," such as Roll20 said they will, Foundry VTT, the makers of Call of Cthulhu,
Right.
Fantasy
Uh,
AGE system. I haven't used that, so I'm not very familiar with it.
Do you happen to know if the Critical Role is where they stand on it?
Here's the thing. I think they're very, very careful about what they
I
say.
bet. Yeah, they have to.
And because I think they're still kind of in
Kind of in
D&D's
bed with
pockets
Wizards
with
at the
Wizards,
moment.
right?
Yeah.
So, but because they did their, what's that system that they just did, their new show, Candela,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is a different system. And I think that's what they will probably move to maybe after
Right.
campaign 3. I think what they're
That's
doing,
already stirred enough shit by itself.
right. I think it's a little smart what they're doing because I think they're probably just kind of like play testing in public with their show going, okay, let's try Candela. Do people like Candela? No, let's try another one. And they'll just do like little mini series of different RPG systems, I think, until something hits. and I think that's what they'll end up doing. That's my
Right.
prediction.
Yeah,
Um,
that's probably about right. I would expect.
right, right. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I don't watch it because it's. I mean, D&D is definitely a draw because I can relate to the rules and what's happening. But
Right.
I'm in it for like the story and sometimes a little bit of the romance. When there's romance in there, I can just keep. I'll eat that alive. Um,
Right.
so yeah, it doesn't matter what system they use. Um, okay, so that being said, have you watched Candela at all?
I have not watched it. I have not had time, but yeah,
Okay.
it sounds interesting.
I'm
How is
having
it?
I'm having a hard time. I like it better than when they did do a series for Call of Cthulhu, and I
Hmm.
had a hard time getting into that one. But I think for me it's just I think what it is I have a harder time connecting with their characters when it's a short form campaign. Because even the ones that they did with Abria and who's the other guy that came in for like their summer kind of like summer programming, they did like
Right.
a short campaign,
Okay.
and I'm horrible with names, but anyway, I I could enjoy it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as their long campaign because I don't have enough time to learn about the characters and get
Right.
connected and care
Right.
about what they're doing.
Yeah.
So
Makes
yeah,
sense.
it's just a little hard for me to get into. But I do like Candela better than Call of Cthulhu, and I think the reason why is because of Ashley Johnson. Because Ashley, if you've followed from campaign 1 ever since the beginning, like
Right.
she wasn't there a lot for campaign 1,
Right.
so and then she kind of missed part of campaign 2 because she was on a show and she was traveling a lot,
Right.
and so once she finally got released from that and could be full-time Critical Role, you could really watch her like role play, her character develop. And now that
Right.
she has free reign, like each character is just getting like more outlandish and ridiculous and fun to watch. She's just kind of like letting loose. And
Right.
her character in Candela is like this like teenage boy kind of character who's just a little like ragamuffin kind of guy. I don't know. It's a great. So I will watch it because of her. Is what I'm getting at.
Right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah, I haven't seen too much Critical Role. I've seen the first series, and that's about it.
Yeah.
I liked it. It's just such a commitment to watch. It's
That many
huge
hours.
amount of
Yeah.
material. Yeah.
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 Um.
Indeed.
Yeah. So we got a little
So,
sidetracked, but with Paizo,
yeah.
one of the things that I was trying to figure out, like, why does this matter to me? Not to me, but I mean, why should it matter to me or to anyone? And I think the thing that I finally clicked was the fact that the OGL is owned by Wizards of the Coast. And
Right.
this ORC is pretty much not owned by any one person. So any creators that create under it have less to worry about as far as,
Right.
the
And
license
if anyone wants
changing.
to change the license, exactly, they're going to have to get a total commitment from the entire consortium.
Right. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm really interested. I'm really kind of interested and torn to see what happens with this because it's almost like when all we had was cable and we didn't have any on-demand stuff. So we were
Right.
forced to watch like these 12 channels,
Whatever was on. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and you
12
kind of knew
channels.
what
I
you were
remember
going to
when there
watch.
was two channels in New Zealand. We had two channels.
Yeah. And so
One of
you
them was
knew
black and
like
white.
on this
Yeah.
day at this time, this is what you're gonna,
Yeah.
ingest or imbibe or whatever it is, your content.
Mm,
And now we
mm,
have so much content, like there's
yeah.
there's no way to keep
Well,
up with all of it.
your social life and your schedule would work around, at least to some degree, the TV. The TV schedule's like, oh, Thursday night at 7 o'clock, I'm watching MacGyver,
Yeah.
and nothing's going to stop me.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm just interested because I feel like this is going to birth just a bunch of RPG systems, which is a really good thing. But
Yeah.
then I think it's gonna get really confusing, and also we might get flooded with some RPG systems that are kind of like, meh, So then it kind of soils the
Yeah.
water, the tasting, for people who are new that maybe won't enjoy it, won't want to branch out to try something else. But there's gonna be, I don't know.
I think that the good stuff will float and the rubbish will sink.
Yeah.
That happens in everything. I remember, because I worked in the film industry, and I was, working in cinema and stuff for a while. And there was this point when suddenly the digital revolution struck, and every man and his dog had a handy cam, and they were out there. Everyone was shooting films, and we were like, "Oh my
Hmm.
God, the film industry is going to collapse!" And it's like, no, 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 because every man and his dog with a video camera generally makes shit films.
Hmm.
It doesn't change anything. There's a lot of rubbish out there, but it doesn't go anywhere. Nobody's distributing it. Nobody's watching it, so it doesn't actually make a lot of difference. So it doesn't matter that there's a glut of RPGs, because they're still going to have to get voted up on the various platforms,
Right.
for them to get noticed.
Right.
Um, so you're not going to be exposed to most of them, to be fair. Algorithms are going to kick in at this point, and you're going to mention, oh, you'll be talking about, I don't know, space elves to your friend in front of your telephone, and the telephone's going to hear you saying space elves, and then you're going to get space elf
You
RPGs
know what we
listed
need?
in.
So, anybody who's an app creator, if you happen to be listening to our show, we need like a Yelp app, but for RPG systems, or like
Right,
what are some of those websites where it kind of ranks them for you based off
right,
of the
sure,
algorithm and stuff? Yeah.
yeah.
Somebody create it.
We should do a ranking episode.
Yeah, we should. I
Okay.
mean, to be fair, I have not tried a lot of RPG systems because I prefer to do in person, and
Yeah,
in person we're only doing D&D. We're actually getting
right,
ready to do Pathfinder. My DM has used Pathfinder before, but we as a group haven't used Pathfinder, so we're going to be
right.
doing that next. So yeah, maybe I'm going to need to branch out and find some online games to test out
Yeah,
different
yeah.
RPG systems, and then we can do a thing.
Well, you're always welcome to come and play vampire with us.
Yeah, I would definitely give that a try. I don't know. How does that work for like do they with one shots? Like do you do one shots because there's a lot of role
I
playing
don't really
involved.
do one shots, but you could do a one shot, and it would
Yeah.
be. It's kind of a Vampire the Masquerade is kind of a slow burn campaign story sort of thing usually, but you can run one shots, and it's sort of action related one shots, and I have done that from time to time.
Mhm.
Um, it's the thing is that over a period of time you start to learn, um, who the other characters are in that world,
Mhm.
and then you start interacting with it, and it becomes more about that network of relationships and
Yeah,
how
that's
they
what I
kind of
thought.
how that happens. But I've run one shots where you've got a bunch of characters. They've got to go to somewhere very, very dangerous and do something very, very dangerous for some reason. But then and that turns into a very usually, frankly, violent, horrific nightmare scenario, which it doesn't have to be. Vampire the Masquerade can be very romantic love story type stuff. It can be very political intrigue. In fact, that's what I prefer. Is that type of stuff. You know, a lot of kind of underworld gangstery, detective-y, crimey, spy drama type stuff.
I thought you were going to
With
say
this
spy E.
right, this kind of epic scale historical backdrop that sort of connects back to biblical themes in some way.
Yeah. So
Um,
let me ask you this then. If not a one shot, how like what do you think would be the minimum sessions to get kind of a roundabout feel for vampire?
well, I think you could do it in a one shot. What I could try and design a one shot specifically. In fact, I really should do this. Actually,
Mhm.
you've inspired me to do this. A design a one shot and designed specifically to bring players into the world of darkness. TM,
Mhm.
trademark, registered trademark, White Wolf, and give them a taste of it in a way that empowers them and is fun, and they don't have to know too much.
Yeah, because I
Um,
think that's what's been kind of holding me back is I don't know that I have a regular time commitment to give out right now, for
right,
anything more. But I would love to do that. And if it's a one shot, I could definitely pull in like a good handful of people to do this with me to give it a try. So
right.
this will be really cool. Let me
Right.
know
Well,
when you got
okay.
that
If
ready.
you want to do it as a group of people, that works. One way I have started groups is to start everybody off as humans.
Hmm.
And so you create a mundane human with a job and some problems, but there's got to be something about them that makes them special enough that a vampire would want to create them and turn them into a vampire.
Okay.
Right, they've got to have some trait, but it doesn't have to be that they're a ninja or that
Yeah.
they happen to be a James Bond. It doesn't have to be something like that. It might just be that they have an incredible talent for making tin can art. Um,
For making
what
D&D terrain.
Right. It could be whatever. I
Oh,
mean, it could be something like that, or it could be any number of things. But they need to have a reason why somebody would choose to make them into a vampire.
okay.
And starting off from that point of view with that human character, I put everybody together at some kind of event or situation in which the story develops into the world of darkness, and they come across the kindred, and they, off it goes, without giving away too much. So yeah, I've used that as a intro point to a number of campaigns and stories, and even for players joining the group that were already vampires, starting them off as humans.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, some of the players have done it a few times now, and they're tired of starting off as
As
humans. They just
humans.
want to get straight into the meat of it,
Right.
which is fair. I understand that. And with the more advanced and experienced players, I do want to run a game where they play elders that have been around for a long time and are very
That's fun.
powerful. So that can be fun too. But yeah, you do. I mean, in order to play an elder or even a vampire in the world of darkness, you do have to know a certain amount,
Yeah.
depending on the context, because there are different sects within the kindred society, and some of them know more or less, and so on and so forth. Anyway, I am taking up all of our time talking about it. So
We'll
back over.
connect offline and then
Yeah,
but that's great. I mean, yeah, just here is my word of encouragement to all our viewers is maybe go try a different RPG that you've never played before,
yeah,
because
yeah,
that's what I'm going to try to do.
yeah,
So,
for sure.
all right. And then if you know how to create apps, create an app to rank them. Thank you.
Yeah, or even better, create an app to run them. Because
Yes.
right now, one of the things holding back most RPGs, I think, is that Wizards have got D&D Beyond on their side,
Yeah.
and that is an incredibly good website, an amazing app. I mean, the phone app's not that great, but it works. But the website itself is amazing, and it allows people like me to run D&D seamlessly and easily.
Mhm.
It just takes out like 80% of the work. It's
That's a
incredible.
really good point. I mean, they're kind of ahead of the curve on this one. So
Yeah,
people are playing
right.
catch up.
And if
Yeah.
you want to play, I don't know, Traveller or any other game, you have to do it with books or PDFs. I mean, okay, PDFs, you can search them. That's a great start.
Yeah.
That is a great start. But compared to D&D Beyond, where you can build encounters in like 20 seconds,
Yeah. Well, and I think what's really the draw for D&D Beyond for new folks is the math rocks versus click a button and it calculates it for you, you know?
right,
So that's
right.
well, I don't know. Well, if okay, we can go on and on about like the mechanics for
Yeah,
vampire. I was curious, but we'll move on for now and we'll talk. Maybe we'll make a whole episode about vampire. That would
yeah,
be
that could
really
be fun.
cool.
Yeah,
Okay, so that guys is pretty much nerd news. Just Paizo put out their license, and I was just wanted to kind of bring that up again, talk about it, and what it's going to impact. So I guess we'll see down the road. But all
right.
right. So this leads us to our segment in Week in Games, and
Hmm.
I actually played this weekend. I
Yay!
know. Hey,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Right,
Um,
well deserved.
well, and so, okay, last session was my first session where I was back to life and I had to play my character a little bit differently, right? Based off of the wish
Mm,
spell. But
right,
because it was the first session back, there's a lot of kind of like info dumping, people telling me like this is what they had to do to bring me back to life, and me kind of letting them know here's what I experienced when I was not alive. And
right.
so there wasn't a whole lot of me
Action.
role playing for them to see that I'm different. There was a little bit, but
Right,
because I just came back from the
right.
dead,
Yeah,
I think they were just expecting that anything off is just going to be off because she just came back. She's tired, whatever. So
Right.
this session was really like,
Just seeding the
yeah,
ideas.
seeding the ideas. And then this session, we were heading into the astral plane. And so there was a lot of time to kind of talk while we're floating in the astral plane and trying to find where we're going. And then there was some action involved. And so and here's the thing is I still can't go into too much detail because I'm worried that some of my
And they're
friends
watching
will be
this.
watching. Um,
Right.
but I can say that playing a fighter barbarian who has always been very angry and who has always been like, ooh, if they say they're always like, ooh, if we say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, she's gonna hit us. Like that's the reaction
Right.
that they get from me. And
Right.
to go from that to being in battle where I really tried not to hurt any, even the monsters tried not to hurt anyone for like the first round,
Right.
and
Right.
no one was picking up on anything. And so then I was
Wow.
like, well, now, like, my friends are getting hurt. Okay, fine. I'm going to quietly rage and I'm going to start crying and I'm going to say, please don't make me do this, as I just start like lashing out with my chains and hitting this monster. And lo and
Nice.
behold, I end up getting the how do you want to do this? And I'm like, oh no, I hadn't even thought of, like, usually my how do you want to do this is like badass anime, pull the spine out of his neck and drink his blood, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, I was like, I'm just gonna start crying and slashing, and I'm just like, please stop, don't hurt me. Like, I'm just, and so all of my friends
Beautiful.
are just like, what is happening? But we
Right.
didn't, we were still in the thick of the action. So I could see now that they're curious. Like, why am
Right.
I different? But we had no time to really RP or discuss it
Explore that.
because we
Right.
were fighting and then fighting and then fighting. And then we finally beat the thing. And now it's 1 a.m. and I got to go home.
Right.
So that, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Wow. That
Yeah.
sounds really cool. Yeah. No, it sounds like you've given yourself an opportunity to really get some emotional depth from your character too.
Yeah. Well, that's
That
the thing.
sounds
It's
good.
yeah. Oh man, I can't wait until the campaign's over so I can really talk about like these role playing choices because it was kind of hard to understand like how can I be a barbarian and rage but not rage.
Right. Like a quiet.
Yeah. So
You'd even be raging about the fact that you have to rage.
right. So yeah, it's more like tears of frustration instead of tears of anger. Yeah. So that's it'll be interesting. But
Right.
and then the other thing I did was I started. Uh-oh. Did I lose Russell? Oh, well, I don't want to say it until he comes back because he's going to be interested, folks. Give me 1 second. Last time he just popped right back up. Here he is. Okay.
Check, check, check. Check,
Here we
check, check.
go. You
I
should
did
be.
nothing. I touched nothing. I did nothing. It's not my fault.
I
I
know.
swear it's
That's what
not
I
my
said.
fault.
That's what I said to the viewers. Uh-oh, I have an echo again now. But I
Oh yeah,
said,
okay.
yeah, I said last time, you just popped right back on. So I'm just going to keep talking until you come back.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's this is the internet.
Yeah, this is what we live in. Yes.
Are we
But
all
so I
good?
was going to say was I started making terrain. So my game that I'm running is this
Yeah.
weekend. So I have to make terrain this week. So
Right.
I finally started recording my terrain making because I feel like I've been
Cool.
getting a few people, viewers or what have you, saying, you need to record this stuff, you need to make videos. So I started. Um, by the time I finish this terrain, I won't have time to probably edit the video and release it or anything. But soon.
Right.
But soon.
Soon. Soon. Around about the same time as Doc comes back.
Probably. Oh, he'll be so excited to see it too. That'll be cool.
Right. Yeah.
So that's my weekend games.
That's your weekend games. Well, what did I do this week? I did some stuff. So first of all, I guess we started this week. For me, it was Vampire the Masquerade, where we have a number of new players. And funnily enough, I'm dealing with a situation where I do have a new player who has time commitment issues too. And so he's only going to be able to play like 2 out of 3 games.
Okay.
So we've been talking about how he's going to work that. And we've been coming up with narrative reasons for him to sort of come and go through the storyline and so allow him to slip out of the story and back in kind of as seamlessly as possible. It's not always going to be easy, but he wants to play and we want him to play because he's a great role player. He's got a great character.
Right.
So we want him involved, but he's not able to be there all the time. So that's a thing. So I guess that's another thing that you could consider, as you could come and go as you needed to. It's not, and it's easier certainly than D&D Vampire in that regard, because you tend to, at the end of an evening, everybody goes back to their havens and they sleep in the ground or whatever they do. And they may or may not come back together and gather again the following evening. And so you could have other things to do. You could easily have downtime that you go off and perform. So it's not a big deal.
Okay.
Yeah, so with the vampire game, what did we have here was a situation where one of the characters recently broke the masquerade quite significantly by throwing a car.
Throwing a car?
Yeah, there was a situation where their nightclub, they have a nightclub, and it was being spied upon by somebody in a black car parked across the street, and it had been there for a while, and they checked it out on security cameras. So Yuri went outside and he went and knocked on the window and then ended up, what did he do? He tore the door off of the car, threw it upside down. Then he tore the door off and proceeded to beat the individual that was in the front seat to death with the car door.
Wow.
Whilst there was a crowd of people on the street gathering around with cell phones and cameras. And so this has led to a rather difficult situation where the FBI have become involved and the cops are all over them. He got taken to jail at one point. He ended up letting them because he could have probably beaten them all up and got away, but the consequences just kind of stack up at that point. It gets worse and worse and worse in terms of consequences. So he allowed them to take him to jail, and then another group of vampires whom he's not aware of broke him out by firing rocket launchers at the police precinct from across the street. And so they sort of that was a whole thing. And anyway, long story short, now he's been introduced to this character named Archon Terrace, and the Wolf Pack, who are a bunch of gangrel vampire motorcycle bikers who follow Archon Terrace around the country fighting the Sabbat. The Sabbat are a sect of vampires that believe that because they're vampires, they should be evil, essentially. So they act like psycho evil characters, and they have no regard for humanity, and they think that they should be in power and control, and that they should be what they are and follow their true nature, as opposed to the other major sect, which is the Camarilla, which are trying to preserve their humanity and maintain civilization, and they have very strict rules about the masquerade and so on, blah blah blah. But they're essentially just another hierarchy. Yeah, so that's been interesting. Then what else has been going on? We had Burning Path last night, where our players previously came to an island where they fought a giant crab. They were on their way to intercept a ship controlled by the Red Wizards of the Barakyle Envoy, whom I've told you about a few times in the past. And that turned out to be a massive event. They Christ. they intercepted the ship. They persuaded them to take down their magical shield by pretending to be damaged and taking on water, and convinced them that they should help us. We're going to sink, kind of thing. And then they attacked them ruthlessly with all sorts of fire arrows and alchemist's fire and magic and magical tidal waves. And imagine a magical tidal wave that's got like alchemist fire, like napalm burning on the surface, hitting your boat.
Wow.
So that was pretty nasty. They smashed the shit out of the boat, and then, oh my God. Right now, one of the characters, the Orcan Ranger, is downstairs in the slave galley where all the oars and rows and rows of oar rowers row twice he's in the galley with all the slaves. They're all chained up to their things. They're all dying because the place is on fire. He's on fire, but he's managed to reach the key from the overlord drummer person dude that's busy telling everyone what to do.
Uh-huh.
My brain's not functioning right now. He gets the key. It's super hot, so it's burning, and the boat is sinking
Oh my
all at the
gosh.
same time.
And he's
There's
trying to
one
save
piece
them?
of- He's trying to save them all as the boat's sinking. Now, the one piece of good news here is that before all of this happened, the druid had the presence of mind to cast water breathing
I was
on the whole
just gonna
party.
ask.
Right. So he's going to be okay if he doesn't burn to death before the boat sinks.
Right.
Um,
Oh my God.
but he's underwater and he's trying to unlock a bunch of slaves who, first of all, the boat is in the middle of the ocean, so it's quite deep. They
Yeah.
don't have water breathing, so even if he can unlock them, there's no guarantee that he can save them.
Yeah.
But he's gonna try. So good on him.
Yeah.
So that's
Wow.
burning
That's
path
tense.
right now. It's pretty tense, and that's where we finished the game. Was right there,
Yeah.
pretty much. And last week we were talking about traps, and it's funny because the very next game session that I ran last Wednesday night, which was 2 days after the very next day after our traps discussion, my brain was full of traps, and I was just like throwing traps in there and inventing traps on the fly. Some of them.
Were your players wait, Avery is here, right? Were your players
Avery's
like,
here.
I know where that came from?
Yeah, probably. I'm not sure. Hang on, what Avery said something here. What did he say? Hey, folks, damn the what's going on here? Everyone can spend. You wouldn't believe a rogue. Are you going to stay giving Rian a disadvantage on social? Right, exactly. Yes, he should totally have. What were we doing with Sunfall?
We were talking about traps. You were inspired by the traps
Right,
discussion.
traps. Yeah, so I threw this very interesting trap. I thought it was interesting anyway. It was a magical trap. They came across this this tunnel in this dungeon. Essentially, it was a dungeon complex, and the tunnel kind of turned into this natural tunnel with a door at the end, a circular door, steel door, and the natural tunnel kind of undulated in towards it in these sort of spiky edges, if you like.
Okay.
And then as the Orcan barbarian went towards the thing, he stepped on something and realized that he'd stepped on it and figured that if he took his foot off it, it was going to go off. So they then proceeded to try and figure out what this thing was going to do. And when they started throwing dead bodies in front of him into that undulating area, the whole tunnel went crushed the bodies like a
garbage disposal,
like an orifice, like
yeah.
organic stone
Sphincter.
jagged spiky orifice. Yeah, it's like the word sphincter came up.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting, and we're yet to see how they left that area actually, so they may or may not come back to it, but we'll see. It's certainly
That's awesome.
A lot of magic involved in creating it, so it's probably important to somebody.
Yeah.
That's all I can say. So yeah, those were my main things this week.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the idea. I have a player who she likes to set off traps by throwing her I think I mentioned this somewhere in some chat, but in the loot that I had given them, there was just this plain bronze rat. There was nothing magical about it, nothing special about it. It wasn't really worth anything either. I was just trying to give them like a little MacGuffin of something in their loot.
Right.
And she, being the rogue, she's the one that plays like the old man rogue. She took an interest in this bronze rat and has used it for so many, like used it to disarm traps. She'll throw it ahead of, to like check tiles and make, she's used it as a bargaining chip. Yeah. So like this stupid bronze rat that was never meant to be anything has actually become like a big part of their items, their list of items.
Right. It's almost like a motif as well,
Yeah. Yeah,
that's great.
Really cool. All right. Well, let's talk about Russell's unsolicited opinion on everything.
Right.
I'm very interested about this topic.
Well, it is an interesting topic. It's also a controversial topic, and I don't want to get lynched. So all of
I
these
won't let that
things.
happen.
But I'm going to put my ass on the line and talk about AI art for TTRPGs. Um, and I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons here because I see two sides to this argument. And in fact, one of the reasons I want to talk about it is because my wife and I were talking about it. She's an artist, and she's been paid as an artist and what have you. And she's a fucking great artist and extremely talented. And she can paint from memory or just create stuff without even references. Like, she's an impressive artist in my opinion. So that is, an aspect of this. So first of all, I would just want to say, why would you use AI art to create, why would you use AI to create art for your TTRPG? And I think a lot of the answers to that are pretty obvious. It's fast. It's often adequate, if not good, if you spend enough time and energy on it. And it's a really powerful tool for visualization and communicating your ideas to people. You can create things like isometric maps. The other day, I uploaded a couple of map images that I had created using vector files and got the AI to elaborate upon them with a bunch of text prompts, right? So you could change the style of it. You could add like 3D aspects to it. You could turn a 2D map into an isometric map, for example, stuff like that. And so I've used it for creating things like tons and tons of locations and magic items, beautiful magic swords that are fucking amazing. Although that being said, it's hard to get it to create certain types of things like weapons and things. It often warps them. I've had a few conversations with Upright Man, funnily enough, because it sounds to me like he's doing a lot of this type of thing too.
Yeah.
We're using different tools, but similar tools, and it's interesting to compare those. NPCs, hundreds of NPCs and player characters. I've made a few player character portraits using this too. And some of them are amazing. And, I'm not, the thing about it is that as a person doing it, you can't really call yourself an artist because you're not producing the art. The art is kind of being drawn upon and combusted into this thing from the zeitgeist, essentially, so it's a fascinating process, and it often produces some crazily cool stuff. But there is some of the negative aspects to it. Is it can often sort of seem sort of soulless or lifeless in many ways. It's hard to get certain aspects of it because the AI, you can try and tell it how to do what you want, but it doesn't necessarily know what that is. Like if you ask for Warhammer, it'll give you a fucking sword. If you ask for a sword, you get a dagger, that type of stuff. It often misinterprets things, but so there's sort of those aspects of it. But I think the most important thing regarding this topic, of course, is the court of public opinion right now. And I've had a few negative comments where people have said things about, don't associate me with your AI art. Don't, I don't want to see it or what have you, or just like basically, what about the copyright issues, blah, blah, blah. So first of all, I guess I'll address that. And I guess this is where it gets philosophical. And I also say that I personally do have misgivings, from time to time about it. And I don't use the stuff that I produce to make money. I've used it to do stuff for people who are already playing in games with me. I'm not like, I've occasionally thrown it on other stuff and in certain situations, but it's generally pretty low key. But yeah, so the copyright aspect of it, who owns those pictures? And my first question is, if you're an artist, like, where did you get your ideas from? Because they certainly didn't come out of your ass. A lot of the stuff is out there. Secondly, if you put anything on the internet, I think everyone knows this. If you put anything on the internet, it's on the internet, and it's in the public domain now. Sorry. That's the thing. And if you don't want people to see it and use it, don't put it on the internet. That's
that's a good, not that this is AI art, but like using Chat GPT I'm
Right.
in a lot of writer forums, and so a lot of
Right.
people get really upset with, using GPT for, writing. But
Right.
in that same aspect, it's like, well, anybody who's written a story, this story was actually inspired from this story, which was inspired by Lord of the Rings, which was inspired by,
Right.
which goes all the way back to,
Right.
and
Right.
is there
And
really
if you can
any
complain
original
about it, I
idea
mean,
anymore?
right. I mean, these are tools, and in the way that we created letters and words and alphabets.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't write stories without those things. Somebody came up with those things. I mean, do we go back and how does that work?
Yeah.
Where does it start? Where does it end? So I mean, it gets very philosophical and emotional, and there is no correct answer. I would like to say, I don't have the answer to any of this, but I
Right.
have feelings and opinions about it. So that's kind of important. As far as like, is there an art to creating AI art? Because the AI is doing all of the technical stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's doing all of the stuff that people have traditionally trained for years and practiced for years to integrate into their own talent.
Mm-hmm.
It's doing all that stuff for you. I mean, you can pretty much be a talentless moron, but you still do need to have a decent vocabulary,
Mm,
and you
yeah, you
still
need
do
to
need
know
to
the
have
language.
ideas.
Yeah.
You need to know the language, exactly. And I recently had the thought that, because on the one hand, you've got a text prompt, right? The text prompt can only be so long. So you have to make the most carefully economic text prompt that you can.
Yeah.
My video froze for a second. I don't know if it's still frozen. Um,
Sometimes it just
I don't
unfreezes, but
I don't know if
it's
it's going
not
to
right now.
unfreeze. It's not. Yeah. I'll just try and refresh that. Nope, it's being a shitbag.
Let me transition and see if that helps.
Try that.
Nope.
I think it's in Streamlabs. I'll refresh my Streamlabs page and see if that works.
Sure.
At least I don't look like a gimp in that.
As he cuts himself off. Oh gosh. So while he's coming back, I'm just gonna say, you know, personally, I'm in the same boat as him, where I can see both sides. One of the things that I like to think about with AI art is the intent behind it. I guess to me, intent is important. Like Russell said, if he's I need to show him. I'm just talking. And there you are. I'm just talking away when I could be showing your face, which is still frozen.
Uh,
I don't know what happened.
can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't know if the chat can hear you, but I can hear you.
Okay, I'm going to stop my virtual webcam, and I'm gonna.
Well, while you're doing that, I was making a little point is
Yeah,
intent, right? So just like Russell
right.
said, if he has drawings of maps and he uploads them, I mean, he created that, and then you're using a tool to build something out further. That I mean, somebody tell me, but I'm having trouble seeing how that is a problem. Um, if you're not using it for I don't know. Yeah, for monetary reasons. I can understand, I guess, being an artist and feeling like your stuff is getting used when you didn't give permission. But if it's not being sold for money or being used for any kind of monetary gain, I'm curious to hear what they say about that. Um, okay, so
Mm.
for your webcam, I see a Lumix something
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Okay.
That's my camera software, but it's not playing nicely for some
Oh, thanks,
reason.
Avery. I was wondering if we could hear Russell. Yes, we can. Okay.
You can, cool. Yeah, I mean, look, I'll just try and talk anyway.
Let me
Right. So I
try
mean,
one thing
writing the
real
prompt.
quick.
Yeah,
Let me try
it's
one
not at
thing.
your end. It's definitely at my
Oh,
end.
it's definitely your end. Okay, then I don't want
Yeah,
to mess with
it's
anything.
because Streamlabs is being a shitbag right now.
Okay.
I'm just going to close Discord, and let's try this again.
We'll just, have that little icon with two eyes, and it's really
Yeah,
cute. We'll
yeah,
just put a little
that'll
smiley
work.
face on it.
Right, right. And I'm just reopening Streamlabs. Oh, there we go. It's moving again. Woot woot. Okay, this should work in a moment. When we get the virtual webcam back, start the virtual
Oh,
webcam.
you're moving.
I'm moving.
You're moving.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfuckers, as
We're
Bruce
back.
Willis says. Okay, so where are we? Right. So what I was getting at is like with the text prompt, because you've only got so many words you can fit into it, and you've got to choose the right words in the right order. And there's a certain poetry to that. It's almost a bit like a haiku in a way. You've only got so
Yeah.
much you can fit in there, right? And so you've got to know what you can say, what you can't say, what elements of those words and phrases are important, and over time learning what they do, learning that if you use the word ornate, it's going to create this effect. If you use the word um, Alvin, it's going to create this effect.
Mm-hmm.
Infused with Alvin magic does a certain thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? In a certain setting, in a certain program, not necessarily in everything, but under certain circumstances in that context, that you're going to get a certain effect.
Mm-hmm.
So I've discovered that if I type in Etruscan dash Alvin, I get a certain style of architecture that I like.
Oh,
um, for
interesting.
example, things like that. And so there is a process of discovery about it, and that's an artistic element, I think. And
I'll have
you're
to ask you. So I have a friend of mine that I play with. He has a turtle character, a turtle monk ranger kind of character, and I was trying
right,
to use AI art to generate
an
something
image,
resembling his
right,
character, and he wears a poncho. And for some reason, the prompt did not like poncho. It kept giving me
right,
a cape, which is completely different. And I
right, right,
tried everything. I even tried saying, like, put him in a potato sack. Like, can you just
right,
do that? And like, it wouldn't even
right,
do that. So there's
right.
definitely a skill to the
Yeah,
prompts you use for
definitely. I mean,
AI
I
art.
find trying to get it to do blindfolds is
Mm-hmm.
really hard, actually. And sometimes you
That's
accidentally
interesting.
get something like that. I tried to get an individual wrapped up in scarves around her head and face. In the end, you have to go with burqa. I didn't
Really?
want to use I didn't want to use the word because I felt like it was sort of somehow culturally appropriating or something. But
Yeah.
it worked. That was the trick, having the exact right word. And then there's the case of the fact that sometimes it just doesn't know what it is. It hasn't trained. The AI is not trained on certain things.
Right.
So that, like fantasy weapons, you try to get a battle axe or a battle hammer, not a fucking chance in hell, buddy. It just can't do it. It just makes everything but what you're asking for.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you get a random correct thing, but
So is
mostly,
that because for like, the folks who are actually creating the art that there's not enough art out there of these things that you're searching?
well, I guess it means that as far as I can tell, the AI owners, the companies that own these AI, because this is the thing, and I'm going to get into this too, is the corporatization of this, because
Mhm.
this is another negative aspect of it. Um, they obviously they have libraries of art that they are putting into train the AI. I don't think the AI has free reign on the internet to go anywhere and take images from anything.
Mhm.
I think there is some effort is being made to control that, and you can literally add prompts like the names of certain artists, and some of those artists just they won't produce anything because they're not in the trained AI,
Yeah.
and some of them have licenses with the AI owners as well. So there are certain, but I've gotten to the point where I'm taking out all of the, because if you use the presets that come in the AI programs, they will oftentimes throw in 2 or 3 artists' names into the prompts. And if you strip
Oh.
those out, you end up having to create your own style, which
Mhm.
honestly makes your stuff more unique and cooler, to
Yeah.
be honest. I mean, I love using the prompt tilt shift, for example, which gives you a kind of semi out of focus, almost kind of miniature model look, which is really cool. I love that. And that's, things like that. So there's using cinematographic terminology and film terms works a lot too. Um, so yeah, things like that. One of my favorite prompts is elemental fire, water, earth, air, spirit, or dark gnosis, or things like that create specific things that and certain effects that look cool. Um,
Interesting.
where the AI is taking general kind of concepts and you can make the most fantastic abstract art, certainly, art, but images at
Yeah.
the end of the day. Okay, so where do ideas come from? So where do ideas come from? Because during my conversation with my wife the other night about this, and she put some really good points that really made me think hard about this stuff. Um, and I guess one of my answers to like, is this just word salad? Are you just spitting out word salad? Is this just the shit in your head going onto a thing? I mean, why? How can you call that art? Okay, well, is a screenwriter an artist?
Mm,
Is one of my questions, right? Because somebody that writes a script for a movie or a TV show, it's very similar. They don't do any of the technical work. They don't make the film. They don't edit the film. They don't act in the film. They don't direct the film. They don't raise the money for the film. They don't do any
mm-hmm.
of that stuff. They just write a story and
Right.
then write it down into a blueprint, right? So then that's what you're doing essentially, is you're putting prompts together to tell us the story of what's in the picture, and the
Mm-hmm.
AI puts the picture together, right? So I think there is an element of talent and artistry there.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near as talented or as complex or as difficult or as weighty requirements as actually painting a picture. Like,
Mm-hmm.
most of us could not paint those pictures, let's be honest.
Right.
Absolutely, I could not in the world paint the stuff or create the stuff that I'm making in the AI.
Right.
Not a chance. I don't have that level of talent. I don't have any training. um, but here's the thing, is like, really good art, in my opinion, is about ideas.
Yeah.
I mean, coming up with an idea for something, like, you can, I think that most people generating AI art are like, I would like a teacup and a dragon inside of it. Okay, so there's a million teacups with dragons, and everybody's making teacups with fucking dragons, and little cute fairies, and little cute dragons, and little glass orbs with fantastic environments inside them. And there's a million of those things, but who fucking cares? That to me is absolutely not art, because there's nothing there. They're just tweaking
Yeah.
something that's already existing. Um, I I want to see stuff, and this applies to any art form, where somebody's got an idea that has some meaning in and of itself. And however you create that, using whatever medium, I don't care. If the idea that's the seed in the core of this piece that you're creating is interesting, innovative, expressive, that's what's important. I mean, I'd rather see, like, just to use a dumb example, a zombie wearing VR goggles, right? That
Yeah.
tells us something. There's satire, or there's irony, or there's something there, but it's an expression of something. You're saying something. It's a communication, and not just, here's another pretty picture
Right.
of a thing, because nobody fucking cares. And also, I mean, I guess there are a lot of illustrators and painters and artists out there right now producing art for D&D and for role players, player characters, people paying 50 to 100 to 300 bucks for a picture of their character, which
Mm-hmm.
they could probably produce using the AI art. And this situation is causing, I guess it's causing a situation where it has to, those that are doing those illustrations are going to have to think about whether or not um, they, I don't know, do they have to raise their game in some way? Do they have to compete with the AI art? Is the AI art always just going to be, it's just AI art, we don't care?
Yeah.
um, and are people satisfied with the AI art? I mean, are you going to prefer an AI picture of your character, or something that's been painted painstakingly by somebody? When
See,
you
and this might be a thing about, learning how to use the prompts, because I have tried and tried and tried to generate something that looks even remotely close to what my character looks like, and it has never ever come close. And the
do you
only
want me
way
to
I
have
can
a
get
go?
close is to commission an artist and have
Right,
that back and forth conversation to go, nope,
right.
tweak this, change that,
Yeah,
and get what I want. But
yeah,
that
for
could
sure.
change in the future, but for now,
When was
personally,
the last time you tried, actually? I'm curious.
oh, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago.
Okay,
It's
because
yeah.
there's been some developments in
Yeah.
the AI that I've been using. They've just started a thing called SDLX 0.9. It's a new version of their algorithm,
Hmm.
and it is at least twice as good as the previous one, and is ridiculously easier to prompt. And it's made it so much easier and so much better, honestly.
Yeah.
So you could try again
Yeah.
and see
Yeah.
how it changes over time. But yeah, what was I going to say there?
Oh, we were just talking about the death of art, possibly.
Right, the death of art, right? And so, sort of, I mean, I've generated pictures that I consider. I was trying to create some sort of anti-statement, um, things using prompts like anti-art, mindless, repetitive, generic pop art, stuff like that, and it creates some cool images from that. But they're very much, and I'm trying to be ironic. I'm trying to use that to be ironic and to make a
Right.
statement using the AI art. And so, from my point of view, I think that kind of is art in a
Hmm.
way. Um, I'm not claiming to be an artist, but
Upright Man says I think he was responding to my comment about making an AI art of my character. But yeah, no, he also made a point. It's really an exercise in human psychology, right? We trained these AIs to associate certain words and concepts. And so, I mean, it's almost like will AI art ever be perfect because it was created by
right,
us, right? I don't know.
right, right. STLX is the new stable diffusion, he says, but it was not released yet. It's stolen. It's certainly being used by at least two websites that I know of, and I'm using both those websites at the moment. One of them is Night Cafe, and the other one is Clip Drop, which honestly, Clip Drop's probably the better site, but Night Cafe has a whole social aspect and runs competitions and stuff. So anyway,
All right.
yeah,
Well, we can make another episode on
yeah,
AI
yeah.
stuff and really get into that.
I guess the final kind of point here, um, that I want to make before we wrap it up is that who owns the AI are the corporations. They're the ones that have paid for it, commissioned it, built it, are paying the employees, and they're getting something out of it. What they're getting out of it is all of the money that they're collecting from people who are
Yeah.
purchasing credits to spend on it. And so there is a aspect of exploitation from the point of view that they are exploiting a vast resource of something that is on the internet. And again, this goes back to, if you don't want it on the internet, don't put it on the internet.
Hmm.
That's a fucking basic rule of the internet. Um, and corporate personhood, they are using these massive AI art libraries or art libraries to diffuse, by doing it through a corporation, they diffuse litigation, they avoid responsibility of doing any of the stuff themselves. So just bear in mind when you are using AI art, there is this whole other aspect to it. There is an exploitative element to it. But if you're using it for your D&D game and you're showing your other players a few pictures of some stuff you thought of and you're not selling it for money, I don't know. Is there a line to be drawn there? Are we going to have all? If you've seen Dune, you might remember the phrase the Butlerian jihad, where basically AI arose sometime in the past and they had a fucking war about it,
Yeah.
and two factions emerged, and there was the people against and the people for it. Are we going to end up with a situation where all of these sometimes beautiful mind-bending images, and I think I've prompted a couple of AI images that were fucking mind-bending, to me at least. They were
Hmm.
like, wow, that is some existential shit right there. That it's some of the abstract stuff. Is that stuff going to be outlawed and banned? Are we are we going to be burning fucking books again because there's all this stuff that the AI generated and it's evil? I mean, what the fuck? I don't get it. Is that how it's going to go? I
Yeah.
don't know.
I don't know. That is curious. I mean, because it's not just art. That's the thing. AI
Mm,
is now a part of everything. So
right.
if you're
AI
gonna,
DMs
you know,
rising.
if you're gonna be against AI art, not that I don't want to draw that hard of a line, but just it
Right.
is incorporated into everything. So then where is the
Right.
line, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, AI generally, I mean, you've got aspects of this where AI is being used in medicine to great effect. It's being used in physics and science and maths and so on, all of these great subjects that are potentially advancing humanity. I mean, on the other hand, all of those subjects can be used negatively. It's always a case of, do guns kill people, or do AI art kill people? I don't know. But, so there's that whole angle of all of the things that it's really good at, city planning and all that type of stuff. Fantastic. But the only area in which it's really questionable is this moral, ethical dilemma regarding who owns what and why. So I guess there's that. I mean, I guess weaponizing it is the other aspect of it, I suppose, that we end up Skynet and the Terminator kind of situation.
Everybody prepare now.
Right. I mean, I don't really believe that's highly likely, but
I'm gonna just keep my mouth shut.
It's fun to talk about it, and it's fun to think about it.
Yeah.
Most certainly. Anyway, so that's my segment today. So separating artists from AI and figuring out how to do that and why and where's the line. And anyone that wants to talk about it or has any ideas or thoughts, please throw them in the chat or message us or me or what have you. Yeah, I'd love to know.
Yeah.
So that's it. Please don't crucify me.
No, I think you handled it really well, really respectfully. Where there's, I'm not going to beat it to a dead bush. That's not the right phrase. You get what I'm saying.
We're not going to flog a dead horse.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's not beat a dead bush.
That gives me an idea for an AI prompt.
Anyway, hey folks, we have hit the point where we are going to go take a little break. This break, we have a bunch of treats for you. There's a music video by True Love Devil, which is really good. I really enjoyed it. We also have our music parodies by Arcane Anthem, which we usually have on a lot of our breaks. I tend to forget to mention it, but they are really good. And then we have an art video featuring Nat 20, which I have seen this video so many times, and it's one of those, it's kind of satisfying to watch. Anyway. Watch the video. It's so cool. And then we have our deception checks. And at the end, we have an interesting bad lip reading, which was unexpected when I saw that there, but kind of fun. So we're going to take that break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about downtime activities. I'm, like I said, really excited about this topic, and I'm just going to preface it by saying that when we decided to use this as our topic for tonight, immediately there was a question of what is even downtime, because apparently just between Russell and I, we kind of defined it differently, and then I brought it to other people and everyone else defined it differently. So this is going to be a really interesting topic. You don't want to miss it. Come back after the break so that you can hear us talk about downtime. All right, folks, have a good break. We'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Who are you? What do you think you're doing here? Ships, you say? Well, sure, there's wrecked ships all over these icebergs. And yes, we may have had a hand in it, but I assure you it is all for a good cause. It is all to feed the demon of the icebergs, of course. It is our holy duty to do so. And although it may come at a cost, well, for those other people, we have been entrusted with this task and shall see it done by whatever means necessary. Thinking to stop us? Good luck. Oh no, not because of us, because of the demon itself. Oh, do you feel that? Now you've done it. She must be waking, and I bet she's hungry. Travel to the frigid setting of the Guardian Icebergs and more unique settings from the world of Inaron. Follow our socials to keep up to date on all upcoming projects.
Have all the mind flayers come to light. Tentacle faith in psionic flight. Harness the patrons, a crew, it's time to idle. Suck out your mind. High intellect, what do they have to gain? Illithid serving the elder brain, calling the weak that they find like time to hide, or they'll suck out your mind.
I'm addicted to the way your mind is played right there before me. I'm an aberration creeping in the underdark, just lurking. I share everything with elder brain. We speak with telepathy, lawful evil. Eat your brain, I drop your HP down to nothing.
Show me what's inside your mind, behind that pretty face. I can't dominate monsters, but they take once a day.
And you can lead your parties to me, make them wish they fled. I'm in their heads inciting dread, and now they're wondering.
Wondering.
Hello there, adventurer. I see you're interested in the vast wealth of knowledge I've acquired and stored over the years. That's fantastic. Come in, out of the sand and the sun. Take a look around. It's not every day such an interesting and willing group of, guests stumble upon my library. Feel free to explore. It's been years since the last group came through here, and they looked much less promising than you. I'm sure you'll find all sorts of interesting things, if you know where to look. But be warned, this library holds more than just books and scrolls, and only the worthy are allowed to leave with the knowledge that they find. So I suppose the real question is, do you have what it takes to impress me?
Oh, it's too easy. Killing off a player's level 1 PC. No longevity. Falling off too high a tree. No more HP. No more HP. You better please. Preparing battlegrounds, level 1's in the crowd. Not many are allowed, one crit could bring them down. So squishy from the mold, they're weak but very bold. Took hours to propose, but seconds to dispose. Who starts this alone, you sadist? Yeah, they'll get ground to great dust.
You think you're black? I'm black, yeah. Brother, you got skin like an English kid. Well, I don't like coffee, but you eat a bagel.
Hey, you know what animals I like? Sharks and skunks.
That's great.
Listen, pretty redneck. I'm taking your banjo.
Come on, don't. That's not cool. He needs his banjo for the talent show.
Man, that's no fair. All I have is a guitar. You get a banjo?
You ready, or do you need something else before you start?
My lips are so sore already.
I know.
I don't want to mess up your dumb potato basket.
A woman thug stole my banjo. You have a new one?
Got cheetah candy, but it's pretty gross. Now I gotta poo again.
No, you just went.
Oh, yeah. Oh, kitty. Oh, you're bleeding on me. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
A friend of mine got a foot, and it's juicy.
What the hell are you talking about?
You know, fish can hear you thinking just before you sneeze.
Choppy chop chop. What's choppy chop chop?
Huh? God. Hey, it's hurting my neck. See, I coughed.
Christine!
Hey, I just heard that.
Excuse me. I broke wind.
Do you have bologna and the fish sticks? That's just great.
I know what it takes to make you hot.
I need a man that can decorate and mix my brew.
Well, I'll wash the dog, but you're washing the laundry.
No, I'm not gonna be your sexy beef friend.
Oh, yeah? Well, just say ah.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Why don't you zip it?
Cheesy bird mess. What'd you just say? I have a cheesy bird mess? Treat.
Uh-oh. What happened?
He said, "Dreet," and I'm about to freak out. I just can't whoop him.
Check, check. You're on mute.
Yes,
You're
I
still on
have
mute.
that problem. I always put myself on mute when we're on break, and then I forget to unmute myself. It's probably best that way. I'm just a tight. I run a tight ship over here. Okay, you know what? That's a good question, Upright Man. Who did the bad lip reading? Because I'm assuming that it is our voice actors for Dungeon Studios, but I have no idea. I didn't know that was in there until I was checking the video feed for the break. So I will find out for you, and I'll put it in the retcon rewind for next week. So. That was fun though. There was a couple of them. I think the one with the really close up face of the crying woman. It's not like she said a lot, but that one was the most funny to me. Anyway, all right, guys.
Right.
We have a show to run. Let's talk about downtime activities. I should probably not be so excited, right? Like downtime.
It was Upright Man was one of them. He
Oh,
said
he
he
was?
was one of them. He
Oh,
was one of
okay.
them. There you go.
So I assumed correctly. It was our voice actors. That's awesome. Which voice did you do? He'll let us know. Okay.
All right.
Not the crying woman though, I'm assuming. Okay, so downtime activities, right? That's ability right there. Right. Okay, so as I mentioned before the break, what is even? I have to add even. What is even downtime?
What is even? Right. What is downtime? What the hell is downtime?
When we talk
and the DM's guide doesn't tell you.
This is true. And to be honest, I was doing my research for the show. There's like I don't want to say no real mechanics, but for 5e, there's definitely no real mechanics for downtime. There's some people who have created mechanics for various other systems that people can use from.
Not even a proper definition of it.
That's the thing. So let's talk about what is even downtime. So when we talked about this, my first thought was, well, downtime is when you're about to take a short rest or a long rest, or you're stuck, your party is stuck on a ship for 2 weeks with nothing to do. Like that's the time when you can say, my character does this, my character does that. But you felt like you had a different definition, right? How did you describe it?
It's okay. Well, I mean, I had a bit of a think about it this morning, and what does downtime mean to me? So what did I come up with? I came up with some ideas. So things like traveling, crafting, brewing, all of the sorts of things where you're making stuff, socializing. A lot of, I mean, I looked through the 1.5 pages that covers some downtime activities and mechanics in the DM's guide, and you've got all the stuff that's crafting and repairing and all the usual sorts of things. But I mean, from my point of view, downtime, if you literally take what's in there as downtime, then most of my games are downtime.
Because it's all heavily role playing, right?
It's heavy role playing, and we role play through a lot of this type of stuff anyway. So is that downtime? I don't know. So I guess that's where it diverges. And so if somebody was to say, okay, I want to spend 2 weeks reading a book or studying a thing or building a thing or what have you, that's what they do during their downtime. And I guess they could state that. And then thus, every time we have a short or a long rest, we can assume that, the artificer continues to work on the blah, blah, blah every time we have a long rest. And so they may just choose to mention that. I might say, what do you do during the long rest? And someone will say, I build a fire, I go on watch, I'm reading the book that I'm supposed to read, I'm journaling for my temple or whatever, so those sorts of things are downtime, I think. But they're also labeling them downtime doesn't really add anything to that.
Right.
So I
It's
wonder
stuff
why.
you can do during downtime. Maybe that's not
Yeah,
not labeling
yeah,
it, but so much as it's an activity you can do
yeah,
during downtime.
yeah. I think that where it's sort of more important to use the term downtime is when you're going to create a mechanic that involves doing that thing.
Yeah.
How many potions can you make? How many crossbows can you string? Whatever the
Right.
thing is that you're doing. So there might be some roll or check involved for your downtime. Yeah, I
Now,
mean, like yeah.
what's interesting, so I went to our Discord server and asked everyone this question because I thought, I want to poll some people. And
Right.
here's trying to figure out how to word this delicately because I don't want to get in trouble. But I feel like maybe there is an aspect of generational D&D happening here because I
Right.
could tell that some of the folks who have been playing D&D for a long time have a very different view of downtime because the way that I gather they did this, Doc can correct me when he gets back on the show, is that they would play their campaign and then there would be like in game it would maybe be like a year or two before their next campaign, and so
Right.
that year or two is their
Was
downtime to
downtime.
say here's what I
Right.
do in that year, or here's how
Right.
I now connect my character to this next
Right.
campaign that we're about to
We're
do.
going to spend the 20,000 gold pieces on building a castle
Right.
between campaigns or something.
Right. And what I think what new players or new, this generation thinks of downtime, being around a campfire, characters
Right.
sharing their backstories, things like
Right.
that
Yeah.
I think is what we view as downtime now, but to
Right.
them that was like, no, that's part of the game, that's not
Right.
downtime,
To me,
that's just
that's
what we
part of the
did.
game too.
Right.
Yeah,
See.
exactly. That's
So
just fucking role playing, and
yes.
I didn't see the point in calling it downtime.
Right. So I thought that was very interesting because it really it definitely opened my eyes to the fact that this is seen as something different. We talked about, I think when we first brought up the subject of this topic, I think we said something like anytime that time is fast forwarding, like you said,
Right.
like, it's now a year is happening.
Right.
I can also
Cinematically,
say, go ahead.
I was going to say cinematically, this is the montage scene.
Right. We're going to
Right.
need a montage.
Right. What we need is a montage.
I was going to sing it, but then I was like, oh, I'm not going to sing it. I also was hearing people say, like, this is the time when PCs can affect things while being off camera, which I thought was kind of an interesting way.
Right.
First, maybe, I'm trying to phrase it in different ways, thinking maybe one of them will click with people, right?
Right.
And yeah, what characters do when they're not fighting. Whether that's like you have a shopping episode, that's downtime, even though you're making rolls for things or, interacting with NPCs or what have you.
Right.
So I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of definitions. I'd be interested for those that are in the chat, what you guys...
Yeah, what do you consider? How do you define downtime?
How do you define downtime? Yeah.
But and then how do you use it?
Yes, because that's...
It's the way it's phrased and the fact that it exists in the DM's guide as a thing and the fact that we've got this phrase that we've inherited from previous editions suggests that it's a thing that should have mechanics and has some kind of importance to the game. Whereas, like, in the way I'm running D&D, it doesn't really exist per se. I mean, there are occasions when people say, in fact, I'll tell you the most important time where I have downtime, actually. The simplest, and it was the example I brought up earlier, is when a player is not there. A player misses a session. That's downtime.
Yeah.
They're doing something.
Yeah.
We briefly describe what it is that they've been doing for the last session and explain where they were and what they were doing. And it might be, Alcas is going gambling and he spends this much money on blah, 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 blah. There was a situation where one of the characters was a gladiator, a part-time gladiator kind of thing, and he wasn't able to turn up. So he literally sent me a bunch of dice rolls by text so that we could find out how well he did in the arena while he was away.
Oh, okay. So he had no idea what he was rolling for. He just rolled a bunch of things. So you had like the order of the roll?
I told him what it was for. I told him what it was for, but it was just via text message during the session.
Oh, okay.
So it was interesting, stuff like that. where
Yeah.
players can't be there for a reason, one or another reason, and then they're doing something else. What is it that they're doing? Well, that's downtime.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing that I feel. Now, again, this is my experience, but from what
Hmm.
I've seen of downtime as a player, is like you could use that time to just add a little, like, it's just flavoring. You're not actually
Right,
doing anything, but you're just kind of
right,
portraying your character. Because when you're in the middle of a battle, you don't really have that chance to, like,
right,
my character is upbeat and happy, or my character likes to
right,
be like lies all the time. Like, that stuff doesn't come
right,
out in
right.
combat, so then you
But
do
isn't
that.
that role playing?
Exactly, that's role playing. So that's your flavor. Or you
Right.
can do something that has actual, like, implications for your character.
I
So
feel like there's a long term aspect of it too. It's stuff. It's when it's not real time. I
yeah.
think that's an important thing. It's not happening in real time. Whatever it is that's downtime is definitely not real time. It's not unfolding at the same speed as the narrative. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, yeah. Like, for example, I have a magical book that one of my players has found, and the mechanics of the book is that if they spend, I think it was something like 50 hours, 50 hours reading this thing, then they will have, like, knowledge about how to kill this dragon that they're going to be going up against, that kind of thing.
Right.
And
Right.
so in this character's downtime, she's spending time reading the book, and she'll say, I'm going to spend 2 hours tonight reading this book. She's not actually spending 2 hours reading the book. It's just
Right. Right.
describing it.
Right.
So,
Because you get so much free time that where you can do light activity during a long rest that you
right,
could, feasibly do a thing that could be considered downtime, where you're not
right.
going to literally role play that out because nobody wants to see people sitting around pretending to read books for 2 hours. It doesn't
Well,
make any sense.
not
So you're
not reading books,
compressing.
but there's some downtime activities that I have seen people actually, like, want to role play that in real time.
Right, right.
Some
Fair
stuff.
enough. I
Yeah.
mean, like games, for example, people gambling, for example. I mean, I'll
Mhm.
often arm wrestling games or dice games or what have you, where people go to a tavern and they get into an arm wrestle with the famous orc, blah, blah, blah. And so we roll some dice to see who wins. But to me, that's not downtime. That's real time role playing.
See, yeah,
You know,
that's so funny. It's definitely, because for me, I'm like, oh,
how is
that's
it,
definitely downtime.
why is it downtime? Why is it not part of the main story?
So
That's,
for
that's
me, I think what it is it's not, the gambling is not part of the main plot. It's something they are doing outside of the main plot.
Mhm.
It's not enhancing their, like, character or backstory or anything. It's just a fun thing that they're doing.
Is
Um,
it? I mean, because you can use this as an opportunity to develop mood, theme, character, plot. In any case, you can introduce NPCs, you can introduce moods and tones and
oh no, you
um,
could. I'm just
other
saying that
aspects of it.
from the character's point of view,
Right,
who's doing the downtime,
right, right,
unless we've talked about it, the DM and the player, that they want to gamble because they're looking for so and so or whatever, like, then I'm not necessarily going to always use their downtime to insert a plot point. I might, but I might not.
right, right. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to be a plot point, sure, but
right,
there's everything that they're doing is going to every action they take is going to reveal some aspect of their character.
right.
You
It's
know, and
so funny.
so if it's a movie, for example, I mean, I don't know, there's such a nebulous topic.
Yeah.
How do you define it? So, have we had anything in the chat? Upright Man, what if the gambling stakes allowed them to win a card that turned out to have a special clue on it later? You're right,
Ooh,
exactly.
see, that's a great. And this is the thing, is now, like I said, sometimes I will use their downtime to insert plot point, but I don't always. But it is a really great. It's a really, I have it actually in my notes later to mention, but we're going to mention it now, that it is a really
Right,
great thing to do, because it turns the tide on them when they're like, "Oh, I'm just going to do this really relaxing thing."
right,
What happened? Like, it
right.
it pulls them in a little more.
And it's interesting because different games have different types of downtime too. Like,
Mhm.
I think I mentioned Vampire before, where what is downtime in Vampire? Because 3/4 of Vampire the Masquerade is just role playing. Like
Mhm.
maybe even 85% of it is just role playing. People, I can literally, as the DM, sit back and watch the game happen, and occasionally insert something. Is so much more low maintenance DMing than D
Yeah.
and D really have to plan the crap out of everything, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So from that point of view, what's downtime? And in Vampire, you do have situations like, oh, I need to feed. I'm going to go and feed. So you
Yeah.
might have. So you establish early on in the campaign what is the character's modus operandi for feeding. How do they feed? Who do they feed on? Do they have a particular system that they use to do that? Is there a nightclub with a room in it where they're allowed to do this? Do they have a group of individuals or a herd of humans that live in their mansion that they feed on? You know, so you might establish a bunch of stuff about how that happens prior, and then they just say, I'm going to feed. And you're like, okay, that takes 2 hours.
Yeah.
You know, and you might even roll a dice to see how it goes, you know, or you're going to travel from here to here, or you're going to go shopping and blah, blah, blah. You might roll some dice to see how successful you were at this larger activity that would normally take, you know, in real time, it might take an hour or two. I think about downtime is anything that's boring that you don't want to put on screen. Actually,
Yeah.
that's what
You
it
know,
comes
that's
down
funny. I wonder now if it's if people's definitions are different also because of DM styles. Because
right.
the my DM, it feels like we don't really get much. I don't want to say that we can't role play during combat. It's just difficult. Most of our role play time comes out of combat. And so I think because of that, my view is skewed to, oh, well, all non-combat, all role play is downtime. And for you, it's very different because your game is so much role play that downtime is something else completely. Like role play is the action for you guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's not to say that we don't have huge combat sequences, especially in D&D.
Right.
I mean, it's you know, like our last Burning Path on the boat and everything. I mean, that whole session was about 80% of that session was combat. You know, but there was still role playing in there. There was still moments of dialogue and people talking to each other and character development and revelation.
Yeah.
But still, you know, and especially because we use a lot of theater of the mind as well. If you're using miniatures all the time, you're less inclined to role play.
I think you're focused on the mechanics. I think when you have a visual that you have to move around. I can see that. Yeah.
And when you're playing with theater of the mind, you can say, I want to do a blah 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 thing. Can I do that? Am I close enough? And because you don't have those mechanics, the DM can just say yes.
Yeah.
You know, and it's easier to keep everyone excited and happy and feeling empowered than a strategy game where it's more like chess.
Yeah, that's true.
You know?
I don't know. I guess it depends. Yeah, we can talk about mechanics versus role play too, because I know there's some people that are very much like, oh no, but I like that.
Right. That's a whole other subject. We should do that as a
whole nother subject. But so now I guess then, because in my notes I was like, okay, well, what constitutes a downtime activity? But you've pretty much outlined that, like, all of this stuff, shopping, crafting, training, like all of this stuff, researching, reading, that's not downtime for you guys. Unless they say, like, I'm just going to spend 2 hours reading a book.
To be fair, reading and researching, I think that's downtime. I'm not going to role play that. That's, you know, basically, if it was a movie, it wouldn't be in the movie. You would see the person pick up the book and sit down, and you might see 5 seconds of them doing it, but you're not going to spend an hour watching someone read a book.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So that's downtime. It doesn't happen. If it doesn't happen on screen, it's downtime. That's how it works for me.
All right. Yeah, so for what else did I put in there? Oh, festivals, like, you know, you were just in a game where you were in a festival, but there can be it's not always, you know, like there could be combat there, or you're making rolls for certain games, and so who knows if that's defined as a downtime activity.
Like, to me, it's downtime if the players say, oh, we're going to go to a festival and then we might meet up later at the tavern.
Yeah. And then we don't really
you know?
Yeah.
That's and we might say, okay, well, you while you're at the festival, you went to a tarot reader and you learned a thing. You might elaborate on it.
Yeah.
You know, brief elaboration, and it's condensed. That's my opinion.
Yeah. No, I agree. Running a business. This is all stuff I found online. Like, what is a downtime activity? I had to pull from different sources because no one has it defined.
Right.
even just settling down and relaxing, which I imagine that's for the folks that are like they're gonna take the year between the campaign and say like, well, my character is gonna rest and get married because we have a year where we're not adventuring. I don't know. Pop out a kid, have some vacation time. Because settling down and relaxing, I don't see that as like I've got 4 hours to, I guess maybe you could say, I've got 4 hours before this happens, so I'm gonna just relax.
Right.
Recuperating, especially if like someone has exhaustion and they need to sleep for like 5 days, like I could see that. Carousing. This is an actual
Carousing.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I saw this on so many sites. Carousing, which is basically what, like bar hopping, tavern hopping.
Well, until very recently, I just assumed that meant whoring, but
It could be that too. I don't know. Maybe I'm very innocent. I'm so sorry.
well, DM's guide describes it as essentially just partying. So,
okay, that's
I don't
funny.
know. It's whatever you want it to be.
We
It
talked
depends on
about
the
gambling and crime. Like I could imagine the rogue in my party that I run, that they would want to just like pickpocket, like spend as much time walking through like a busy street and pickpocketing just for their downtime.
Right. Actually, here's one I don't think anyone's thought of, and that is grieving.
Ooh, yeah.
Grieving is a downtime activity because so many in D&D there is so much violence and death.
Yeah.
And nobody ever thinks about it or cares about it. It just, oh yeah, we're just having fun killing stuff, But really,
yeah,
it's one of what it's the obviously the biggest role-playing game around, and the whole thing is predicated on this notion that you advance your life through fucking violence.
Yeah. No, that's actually a really great point, because in the game that I play in, like my character is so, PTSD traumatized from her backstory that when we went through like it was like, I think 3 or 4 sessions. And remember, we play monthly. So this was like 4 months of just really heavy, deep sessions that were full of combat and people dying and just all this stuff. And when we had our next session after that, I remember me and one other character, we kind of rounded all of us up into a tavern, and we tried to force everyone to talk about their feelings, because I was like, guys, we just did A, B, and C, and like so many people died. Like, I need to process this. And everyone else was like, why? Like, why do that? And I'm like, no, get in my head with me here. Like, understand. We have to grieve.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's a thing, and few players consider it. Because, I mean, let's be fair. They've just spent their whole week working at whatever job they're doing, and they've come to their weekly D&D session. They want some escapism, and they want to have fun.
Yeah, they don't want to role-play grieving, yeah.
Right. I mean, but it does absolutely depend on the characters and the players and the group. I mean, if you're in a group that wants the game to feel like a novel or a movie or a book or even a soap opera, and you want that immersion and you want that separation from your reality into that, and you want to be able to believe in the characters, then you have to have believable characters.
Yeah.
And so it's part of the verisimilitude of the story to grieve. It gives you this opportunity to have this unique, and there's also some catharsis in it too, because you're subconsciously, part of you is doing that grieving.
Yeah.
So
no, that's a very good point. Glad you brought that up, because that's in your right mind. Maybe you're not in your right mind. That's what it is. If you just can do all of that and just be like, I'm fine.
Adventurers are very strange characters. Let's be honest. I mean, they're very specific. Not everybody can do that and be what they are. There's
pit fighting is something my character would enjoy doing in her downtime.
Definitely. That's happened in my games too. Downtime pit fighting. Alcast, what Avery's just mentioned him, whatever Alcast does.
Looking for a fight.
Downtime. Yep.
Even if it's not pit fighting, our party tends to, whenever we're in a new town with a pretty interesting tavern, we tend to start bar fights. And I think we used to mean it in the beginning, and now we don't. It just kind of starts happening. But yeah. Carousing. That's a carousing pit fighting thing.
Carousing, pit fighting. Yep, totally. Chasing members of the opposite sex. That type of stuff.
For
romance.
those with artists in your group, or maybe it's AI stuff now, I've seen a lot of people use downtime to change their appearance. It'll be part shopping episode. They'll buy new clothing, but they're describing what their clothing looks like. They change their
Well,
hair. They
yeah.
get tattoos.
Right.
Yeah.
A great example, obviously, is the Eladrin that can change their entire look and features every long rest.
Oh,
Changing
right.
their seasonal look from winter to summer or autumn or whatever.
Yeah.
There's that. And tattoos, great. I mean, I had a group who were in the northern Frostmoor area, and they were dealing with Goliath tribes, and they impressed the Goliath tribes enough that each tribe that they worked with gave some of their members tattoos, and we had whole scenes there. And I made them roll constitution checks to see how much they squealed.
That's awesome.
And that would change their relationship to the Goliath tribe based on how strong they were during the tattooing process. They'd be more or less impressed with them. So
yeah,
there was
that's
some
interesting. See, we had downtime with tattoos because we found a city that had a magical tattoos. But the price and the time that it took to get these tattoos. And when you have a party of 5 or 6 and they all want tattoos, we had to stay in this town for a while.
Right. Actually, I'd like to, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, it was a lot of fun to really think about like what the tattoo would look like. What's it going to say? Why am I getting this tattoo?
How did you deal with magical tattoos? Because obviously Tasha's Cauldron's got rules in it for new magical tattoos. I don't know if you use those rules. But I don't like those rules. And the reason is essentially because, to me, a tattoo is something that you get. It takes time to put it on. It's permanent. It doesn't fucking go away, not easily at least.
Right.
Whereas in Tasha's Guide, you find a needle, you put it in your arm, bang, there's a tattoo there. And if you choose to unattune to it, it goes way back into the needle and you can give it to somebody else. What the fuck?
Now, is that how Tasha's actually describes it? Because I haven't read that in Tasha's. And
pretty much, unless I'm wrong, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but it's very simplified and very impermanent, and kind of dilutes the whole idea of a tattoo.
Well, see, so nobody has gotten a magical tattoo in my game. I hadn't thought about that, but in the game that I play in, my DM has decided that when you unattune, you still have the tattoo. It's just no longer, the magical effect is no longer in effect. So
that makes sense.
It does, but it doesn't, right? Like you're right. Like, what am I do? Am I just thinking about my tattoo, and that forces the magic back into it?
Right. And also, I feel like, as far as tattoos are concerned, they, in a D&D high fantasy, medieval, high fantasy kind of universe, to me at least, this is something that you get from a shaman that's had it passed down for thousands of years. There's a tradition involved. There's all sorts of cultural elements that feed into it. You don't just walk up to a shopkeeper and say, I want a magic tattoo and here's 1,000 gold.
Right.
They're like, okay, well, who are you? What have you done? There's got to be some reasons for that. There's got to be some cultural connections to make that seem vaguely realistic and authentic. Otherwise, you're kind of just appropriating shit.
Right.
And it's just kind of diluted, watered down to me.
Yeah, I'll have to read more up on it and see. Because like I said, no one in my game has decided that they wanted to do it, so I haven't bothered to look into it more, but I'd be curious.
Yeah, I mean, I want to create a system of like elven tattoos and orcan tattoos that have shamanic or other types of magic infused in them, but they have to be permanent. So because there's a commitment to a tattoo. When you get it in real life, it's a commitment. It's a lifelong commitment. And I don't want to take away from those things.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyone that's got ideas for mechanics and ideas, please send them through. I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, that'll be great. Upright Man says, going back to the downtime with the wedding, he's like, and then your DM says, well, here's what happened at your wedding, and then the next adventure begins. That's true. Right. Yeah, you could even, if you have a game where you're doing that, where it's campaign, downtime, campaign, then you should consider what your party is doing for their downtime and somehow weave that into the beginning of the next campaign. I think that's great.
Right.
Let's see. Working on a character concept with magical tattoos.
Upright Man, I think you and I would make great friends. It sounds like you and I agree on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
We're probably both relics of the 70s, I'm guessing. I don't know. Are you also a Gen X? What am I? Am I Gen X or I don't know.
I get so confused with that stuff now. I'm sure
What we
there's a
got now?
table that says.
Right, somewhere.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So let's see. The last thing that I thought about for like downtime activities is like depending on your class and or your backstory, it's like, druids, if you're trying to learn how to make potions, you might go spend time collecting herbs and make brewing potions or brewing alcohol or, scribing a scroll if you're a wizard or I think our wizard, no, he's a sorcerer. In the game that I play in, we had talked about him creating like a teleportation sigil like on our ship because we have the
Nice.
airship company. I think I told you we started an airship
Right.
company, so we have all these airships. And he thought, "Oh, what if I have a teleportation sigil so that if we ever need to like get the fuck out of Dodge, we can show up
Right.
on one of our airships." But
Right. It's an oh shit
my
button.
understanding was rules as written is you need to spend time in that location for like one day or sorry, every day for like a year. And so he's like, we're never going to
Yeah.
be able to create this teleportation sigil unless we spend an entire year on this airship and I never leave it.
Right.
So
That's yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, there's certainly difficulties involved in that sort of stuff, but that's downtime. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So
and we kind of touched on like why have downtime, right? Character development, uh, keeping people immersed, you're keeping yourself immersed, right? Like attach yourself to the story by doing
right.
something with downtime that like plays into the plot.
Yeah. It's also an opportunity to kind of update your backstory in a way too.
Mm-hmm.
Like if it's well, I don't know, from my point of view, being an old man, between campaigns, there's this section of area where you and the DM can negotiate new backstory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because when you start again in the next campaign, that's now backstory. Everything that happened prior to now is backstory, essentially. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's a new opportunity. You could even say, "Oh, I went on another 10 adventures between then and now," and there's stuff that might have happened. I mean, if the DM agrees to it, you could have become Queen Bladidar of Wazamahu. In the meantime, that's possible. The DM, you might be playing a campaign where that happens.
Yeah. That's true.
We did a vampire game where we took literally like 20 years out, and then talked about what's happened in the middle between them.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Yeah.
So for those parties that do like character discussions around the campfire, like for long rest, short rest, that kind of thing. That's the reason. It's role playing. That's right. It's role playing. But the reason to have that is because that helps with party cohesion, right? Like if you care about your party members because now you understand why they are the way they are or why they're doing the thing that they're doing, it kind of there's a little buy-in to participate. Right. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. And because you have that buy-in, the stakes become higher. So when you do have combat, it has consequences and has gravitas.
Right.
If you don't have that, your combat is meaningless.
Yeah.
You might as well be playing a video game.
So this is a tip for DMs, right? Like you want to try to encourage this kind of said downtime role playing. You want to encourage that, right? But also see, it's so funny because I know you keep saying role play, and I'm like, you're right, it is role playing. But also, I guess from a view, sometimes it's anyway. But for DMs, if you have 4 sessions in a row that are really tough, try to encourage a session where there is more downtime for this kind of thing. Right. Just because, anyway, I know for me, I get so emotionally invested that if the game is heavy, I feel heavy. I go home. If something sad happened, I go home. I feel sad for the rest of the month until I can get out of that part of the story. Yeah, I'm just stuck there. And I know that's not everybody, but if you're a DM and you have players like that, try to diffuse the tension with some downtime. Try to encourage that.
Right.
And then PCs, if you have a character that has a vice, or if your character doesn't have a vice, give your character a vice because it's a lot of fun. And then now you spend your downtime exploring this vice.
Well, and that's an interesting subject, actually, because like people who play paladins, for example, lawful good paladins, say you have a lawful good elven paladin. I'm not getting at you, Avery, by the way. I know you have paladins. This is not about you. This is more of an archetypal thing. The thing is, you can have a paladin that has vices, and that's what makes them interesting. It might be that they've killed someone. It might be that they have an alcohol problem. It might be that they have a gambling problem, because now they have inner conflict. Their intention is to be good, but they have this thing holding them back, or pulling them, or tugging them in some direction. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, Avery. I just know you were playing a paladin last night, and I didn't want you to feel that I was targeting you at all. This is nothing to do with that. This is, yeah. But the point really is that you've got a character that has some other thing, some inner conflict, and that's the important thing. It's to see, in order for them to be a paladin, they have to have something to overcome. And if they don't have an obstacle to overcome, and especially an inner obstacle, it's not very interesting. I mean, every decent character,
no character growth.
There's no character growth, exactly, and there's no conflict.
You know what this reminds me of? When I was working in the corporate world, I had a boss who said, when you get your yearly review, right? And I prided myself on being the best worker. I was always, before this boss, all my reviews were like 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. Like, you're great. We can clone you. It'd be just perfect. Like, and I prided myself on that. I like that. But I had this one boss, and the first time he reviewed me, everything was 4 stars. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I did even better this year than I did last year. Why are you giving me 4 stars? And he said, because no one's perfect, and you always have room to improve. And this is where you're going to improve. Here, here, and here. You're 4 stars. Everyone's 4 stars. Everyone. And I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah. I rate movies the same way. If you're rating a movie 1 to 10, I never nothing gets a 10, because something could always be better. There might be another movie next year that's better than that film.
Yeah.
And it gives it room to improve. There's always the possibility that it could be better than what it is.
Right.
Unless there's some kind of finite aspect of it. You made the perfect quiche.
Yes.
I don't know.
It could be. But so that's, even that, like, that's some kind of arc to give your character so that you can work through during downtime, which is, I want to try to make the perfect quiche. And you keep trying, and you keep trying, and you keep failing, and you can't find that secret ingredient, whatever it is. Just the littlest weakness can do so much.
Actually, I mean, you made me think about this, because I want to go back to the grief thing, right? Because now I'm thinking, what if you had mechanics for grief? What if you had to roll a check every downtime session to see how your grieving process is going, and that can inform how you're going to role play your character going forward. So if you might roll a natural 1, which means your character's like totally fucking depressed, suicidal, they've lost somebody, they're just destroying them, and you roll a natural 20, and they're like, I'm so sorry that Jackaboo died, but I'm sorry for his loss, and he's in a better place now.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting idea, because I'm not going to get into personal stuff, but yes, that's my experience with grief, is that, there can be days where you're fine, or days where you're like, it's there, it's affecting me, but I can push through. And then there's just the one day where it's like, for whatever reason that you can't fathom, it's the worst day.
And what if every time you rolled a natural 20 on this check, you got a +1 bonus to the next check?
Yeah.
Right.
That's cool. So then you can finally kind of get to a point where you're getting like mentally healthy.
You're improving over time.
Look at these mechanics we're coming up with. This is just downtime grieving.
Downtime
we're not even
grieving.
in the world building segment yet, and you've created mechanics. I love it.
Hilarious.
So yeah, which is, I was just about to get into talking about mechanics, because when I did my search, no online mechanics except for other RPGs, and some of them are kind of, if you need to find something to use, like one of them had, it was called Burning Wheel, and it was a table for practicing a skill, which I guess I could kind of understand if you wanted to role play and ask your DM, like, this is the year between campaigns, and I want to improve my, I don't know, tracking. I want to be able to track things in the forest. Like, is
right.
there some kind of a mechanic so that they can bump that skill up?
Right.
You know,
So,
Burning
do
Wheel
you
kind
need
of,
a mentor? Do you need to
yeah.
practice? Do you need the right location? All of these factors that go into that might give bonuses or penalties to your learning ability in that respect.
Right. Yeah, so
Interesting.
but see, this is funny because with the mechanics, like if you're doing that kind of a downtime where it's like I'm just going to describe what I've done in my year,
Hmm.
then I'm not sure that this mechanic works because it's a table that says like here's how much you have to practice per day and here's for how long. Like you have to practice this
Right.
much per day for 6 months and then
Right.
you can improve this much. But if you want to improve this much, then you have to practice this long and and if you want to improve
Mhm.
all the way to like mastery level. And so
Right.
if you're just going to quickly describe like my year, then I don't know that this particular set of mechanics works cuz I feel like that's more for like role playing. You want to be able to like parse out your time. Time is the commodity when you're playing. And if you don't have 2 hours in your day because all of a sudden you're caught in the astral plane, like I feel like that's where this mechanic plays better than if it's just in between campaigns and you say,
Right.
well, I
That kind
practiced
of
for
describes
5 hours
a
a
little
day
bit.
for a whole year.
Right. But the thing is, if you're talking about a whole year, and if you're going to have a mechanic for this, there should be things like setbacks. Like, let's
Yeah.
say you choose to start a tavern. Okay, so you start a tavern, and you want to know how well the tavern improves over the year. Well, what about setbacks? What if it doesn't improve? What if it burns down? What if somebody robs you?
Yeah.
What if you get into bureaucratic legal problems about the land being owned by the goblins that built their graveyard here 200 years ago, or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of shit like that could in fact send you backwards rather than forwards. You're learning to be a blacksmith, you have an injury, you
Mm-hmm.
hammer your hand or something. There's these all sorts of possibilities that could go in either direction. So there's ideas for mechanics.
Yeah. No, and that's actually a great point is setbacks because um I think that also kind of ties into like if you're going to try to connect their downtime to your plot and you're inserting like and then this happens, but you
Right.
could also include setbacks because just
Hmm.
because you say you're going to be practice yeah, I mean you kind of outlined it there. Just because you say you're practicing this thing doesn't mean
Right.
that you're
It's
going to
going to
get
go well.
it's going to go well. Or yeah,
Right.
I'm trying to create this potion, but it's my first
Right.
time creating a potion, so
Right.
there should be
Blew up in my
mechanics.
face.
Yeah, that it blows up in your face, or the potion doesn't do what it's supposed to
Right.
do,
Or
or
you have to have a mentor to learn the skill, but you've got 5 in charisma, so the mentor fucking hates you and decides they're not going to teach you anything anymore.
yeah. So there should be some setbacks, or at least you should, as a DM, come up with some mechanics to provide the risk of setbacks, so that it's
Right.
not always setback, setback, setback. I mean, give them
How
the
many
chance to
people here in
succeed.
chat think about it over the last year of your life? How many things have gone really well? How many setbacks have you had? I don't know the answer to that. It depends on the year, it depends on the person, but I guarantee there's been setbacks and there's been progression. The two of these things go side by side.
Yeah.
And sometimes the progression is overcoming the setbacks.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's so weird that I mean, I guess I get it. There's no set mechanics for this. So it's like trying to think of, what do you as a DM have to look out for when you're doing downtime activities, right? And one is don't make it like, oh God, I got to roll 20 times for this one thing, right?
Right.
I don't know, but you also want to like maybe provide some roles in there to make it engaging, to provide the risk of failure, to,
Right.
so you got to find that balance with your party of,
But then you have to turn it into a little mini game.
and yeah, turning it into
Right.
a little mini game.
And it's best if you can incorporate the whole group, not just one person
Yes.
as well. Otherwise,
Yeah.
that's tedious for everybody else.
Exactly. Yeah. So I understand why it's hard to write mechanics for this stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see. We talked about repetitive like roles and stuff. Yeah. Okay. And if players, so we provided, or I provided a list that isn't always an all-encompassing list of downtime activities because what is even a downtime activity? But how do you mitigate when a player wants to do something for their downtime that there isn't even like mechanics you can Google, like no mechanics whatsoever.
Right.
How do
Right.
you mitigate
Common
that?
sense. Is
Common
it,
sense.
you have to, yeah, well, you have to try at the least. That's. Do we have an example? Can anyone think of an example
I
of
have an
something?
example, which is why I'm
Okay.
asking. Okay,
Shoot.
so
Let's see.
I
Let's examine this.
I talked about this in our Discord with a few folks, but I think I did. So my husband
Yep.
has a blink dog. For it's just a pet, but the blink, but he actually utilizes his blink dog like as kind of like a working dog. Like he, from the very beginning of the campaign, he's like, I want to spend time training this dog. I want to train this dog to track. I want to train this dog to do this and that, to like to follow, to whatever, like a real dog. And
Right.
there's no mechanics for that whatsoever.
Right.
And so I'm like, okay, but I can't also just, I mean, this is going to be years long campaign. I can't every
Right.
session go, okay, now your dog knows how to do this. Now your dog,
Right.
like your dog will be so OP by the time this campaign is over. So I had to
Right.
come up with some kind of mechanics.
Right.
And basically what I
Okay.
did was I said, okay, well, you're going to roll an animal handling check. And then I kind of came up with like a range of DCs where if you roll low, then like training didn't go well today. But if you roll kind of medium, like we're going to have a percentage bar, like a progress bar. And if you want to
Right.
train him to track, guess what? Today you worked with him and now he can track 10%. So like now, if you want to use him to track, you have to roll a percentile dice. And if you roll 10%, guess what? He's able to track. But if you roll anything else, he's not able to track what you're. So
Does he track with the dog? Like, is he working with the dog to track?
yes, like he'll describe, like
Right.
I'll pull up this player's sock, smell the sock. I'm gonna go into the forest. I'm gonna hide the sock, and then I'm gonna have him try to track the sock. That kind of thing.
Right.
So he
Because
describes that stuff.
you could use the helped action and give advantage for tracking because he's helping the tracker, so to speak.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You mean like outside of training?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
You could even do
don't
it
give him
during training
ideas.
if you're role playing the situation. Even because I've role played whole training sessions. This is a funny thing actually, because this came up in my vampire game the other night. The players wanted to talk about experience points and character progression in our vampire game. Because I am really stingy with experience points in vampire, and I've learned to be, because I've run very long campaigns where players have had a lot of experience points and they go from very weak characters to very strong characters very fucking quickly, and it's not long before their fledgling vampires turn out to be more powerful than the prince of the city, which is ridiculous. I mean, you've got these 100-year-old vampires that are less powerful than these 6-month-year-old vampires very quickly, and that's stupid in my view. So I really worked to control that situation, and originally I had a situation where every time you succeeded at something or you failed at something, you gained part of an experience point. You get, I call them skippy points, and then you could spend your experience points to develop the skills that you use. Only the skills that you use. And that includes training with a mentor. So if you practiced, if my friend Barry took his character to the shooting range, that's practice. He spends 2 hours downtime shooting guns at targets. He gets to roll some dice to see if he gets any experience points from that. So that sort of thing. But they wanted to use a system where they use milestone experience points, where instead of gaining little bits of experience and then slowly filtering them into skills, they would just get a new skill every now and again. And that also mitigates when you've got people that are there or not there at the session.
Yeah.
Because then they stay at the same level as everybody
Everyone else
else.
stays at, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm sorry, that was a bit of a sidetrack.
No, that's fine. I mean, it's all about mitigating the whatever they want to do during downtime. I mean, every character's different, and now I feel like people are really creating some wild backstories for their characters. So it's like you can't be prepared for everything. You can't have mechanics for everything. So then you have to think, for this downtime activity, how am I going to mitigate this? And my best advice is add a roll or two so there's risk, but not a bunch of rolls. And like you said, try to involve everyone in this if you can, and maybe provide some setbacks so that now it's tied into the plot. And there's all kinds of stuff you could do. But Yeah.
Right. So Upright Man says D&D 3.5 had specific rules for training. I never played 3.5, to be fair. I played like 3 or 4 sessions of Pathfinder once, but I never
I
got
played
that far into it.
3.5, but I never played anything that had a pet because I didn't want to have to deal with a pet. So I'll have to look up. And when I started DMing, I was already in 5e. So I'll have to look that up and see if
I have
it'll
a
be helpful.
player now who wants to have an animal companion. He's a ranger, but he's not a beastmaster. He just wants to have an animal companion that he can teach to do things. And I've been sort of stalling about how that's going to work. So yeah, I'm interested to see what you guys come up with and what your thoughts are.
Yeah, that's the thing. We can talk about pets and companions in another episode,
That's
but
an episode right there.
yeah, it's so hard because especially when they start getting high level and they're fighting like really high level beasts, it's like if you bring your pet into battle, it's fair game. I'm telling you. I'm warning you.
Not like a familiar that you can resummon.
Right, right.
You know, it's going to be, yeah, it's vulnerable.
Yeah.
And actually, that's an interesting thing because as far as tension and drama and character death is concerned, there's a lot of emotional investment in a pet. As a DM, you can create an awful lot of woeful grief to grieve about by killing one of their pets.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying you should, but under the right circumstances.
Yeah. Know your party, know your audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
But or set expectations because like I know if I killed one of their pets, my players will not be happy with me, but I have told them often and from the very beginning. So
they are
it
at
won't
risk.
be a surprise. Yeah.
But
all right, so well, I mean, we kind of did a little bit of world building with this, which is trying to create mechanics for grieving, which I think was so cool. So I just kind of came up with a couple things that I thought we could try to world build as like a downtime thing. So one of the things, I mean, I've already kind of built this, but I'm curious to know how you would build this, which is one of my players has what we call like inherited armor. It was passed down to him and it was kind of in shitty shape when he got it, but there are like blueprints, like plans for this armor that came with it that says like if you have this amount of materials, if you spend this amount of time working on this, then now this armor will do this. And if you put this much material and this much time, and it's set to a point so that basically the armor grows with him. But and so yeah, he has to, for downtime, he has to describe how much time he's spending on the armor. He has to go shop, look for the materials, that
so
kind of
upgrading
stuff.
it basically.
Yeah, and then you know there's some kind of a role for like his performance or his ability to work on it. But do you have anything like that? Have you created anything like that?
Not really, not specifically like that.
Or
the
like even a
I've
weapon?
Well, so we've got a lot of what are called ancestral weapons in our game, and we use a PDF that we got from DM's Guild, which is called Ancestral Weapons. It was given to me by one of my players. I don't know where he got it exactly from, except that it was DM's Guild. But I've got a copy of it here, actually. One moment, please. Pull it out and show you the fancy pictures in here. So when he gave it to me in this lovely folder, Ancestral Weapons, right?
Yeah.
And it's basically rules for building magical items that level up with your character.
Yes.
And how it works is that, according to the rules in here, they have spirit points. And essentially, every time you level up or you hit some kind of milestone, the player gets to spend those spirit points choosing from the various upgrades.
Oh, so they get to choose what the weapon will turn into.
Well, they get to negotiate.
Okay.
With you. They don't just choose. If you trust your players to do that and not make it overpowered, stupid, off-brand, out of theme, because I mean, of course,
that idea.
Not all of these things are. So the more, obviously, the more powerful the ability or power that comes with it, the more spirit points they have to spend on it. Right. So you could spend, say you've got 4 spirit points, you can have one powerful thing, or you can have 4 relatively minor things.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? So there's different ways of working with that. So the Ancestral Weapons book, see if you can find that. That's a good start. And so using points and spending points, and even if you define the points and create the system, might work well. And you could integrate that with your sort of artificery type skills and make skill checks as well to make it even more complicated if you wanted to.
Right.
But I feel that keeping it simple is generally better. And I also think that I'm a big proponent of avoiding the dice rolls and negotiating with your players directly. That's my preference, to be honest, is to say, because players, even the power gamers, want to be challenged, right? And they don't want everything. They've got an idea for a character, and they've got like a seed of an idea that's the core of their character. They don't want everything because they know that's stupid.
Yeah.
So if you can find out what it is that they want and you can stick to the spirit of that idea, then it's relatively easy to negotiate with a half decent human being. Something that's fair and reasonable. And sometimes overcomplicating it with dice checks and what have you makes the experience worse for them, because they might roll shitty numbers, and why do that to them? It's supposed to be a cool experience, why make it hard? It doesn't have to be.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
Anyway.
So I'm a big Final Fantasy nerd. I don't know if you've played Final Fantasy 7, but with 7 it was all about like the weapon, the sword or the armor, but I'm just thinking of the sword right now, had like little slots in it where you could put little different gems or rocks that do different things. So now your sword has different abilities and you could swap them out whenever.
I love that. World of Warcraft does that too,
Yes, I love that idea. And I'm certain because it's been out, Final Fantasy's been out for a while, that someone has created mechanics for this or homebrewed it.
Yeah.
I just haven't looked into it yet, but I would love to figure out that idea, because I don't want it to be too OP. And I would like the ability to, I'd like the ability to have that weapon get more slots in the future. I don't know. I'll have to think more about that, but or they just find a weapon that has more slots.
Yeah, I think personally I would go with have a weapon that has more slots, or build the weapon.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that the things that you stick in, the enchantments or infusions or whatever they are that you put in those slots, they could have charges or a duration. That's or true. Something like that, right? They don't have to last forever. They can wear down.
Yeah.
And they can also come in different sort of powers. You can get a minor enchantment of speed or something, or a major enchantment of speed, which may give you more or less attacks or something like that,
right.
Or accuracy or lightning or something like that adds to it. Or the game Neverwinter, not Neverwinter Nights, just Neverwinter, the role-playing, the MMO, has this pretty much this exact thing where you've got slots in all of your armor and weapons, and you can add enchantments to them, and you can buy different enchantments and different levels of enchantments, and you can even make them using the crafting workshop and sell them on the auction house and stuff like that. So there's a whole system for it there, and it is really cool. And it would be good to include that in a D&D game, and I don't know why it's not there. It's a great idea.
And it builds so much downtime in there, because now they're doing more shopping. They're searching for certain, gems or rocks or whatever. They're working on different combinations, like trying different combinations out to see, like, how does this work when I use this in my weapon versus this? I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. Traveling to certain areas because only this area has this certain type of gem. So, yeah.
Right. And you might have different, I hate to use the word artificer. I don't mean that. I mean, the individuals that create these enchantments, there might be only so many of them in the world, and they might be in different places, and you might not be able to do it. You might have to get somebody who has spent their whole life learning how to do this thing. It's a huge amount of skill and power and resource that they have personally put into it in order to do that. They can't just get the AI to make it in 2 seconds.
That's actually another point too, is instead of the player being able to just like switch out the gems whenever they want, it's
Right, you
the
have to get someone to
enchanter.
do it.
They have to take it to the enchanter, and the enchanter can
Mm.
change up what gems go in there. So now
Right,
they have
and
to
that
find an
enchanter,
enchanter every time.
right, and that enchanter might not be a corporate capitalist.
Yeah.
They might want actual reasons, like spiritual reasons or cultural reasons to help you.
Yeah.
Or justice or any number of other things that are character based and story based and add depth to their character, rather than just, I pay 1,000 gold pieces so you can put this thing in my sword. Who cares? Make it interesting. Turn it into an interaction. Make it a role playing thing. I mean, in my opinion, you make everything some kind of role playing thing that deepens the characters, the stories, the interactions, the fucking world.
Yeah.
If you can, in any way you can.
Yeah.
Opportunities to tell a story.
I love that. Yes, role playing everything. We already talked about training a pet, or a companion, so I'm not gonna discuss that. But doing like gambling, like we talked about gambling games or festival games, I find it's a lot of fun to just take already existing mini games and then just transport them into your world. Why are you? What'd you think of?
I just had an idea. I'm sorry. We're going backwards a little bit,
Okay.
but we're going forward. Okay, so you're talking about item enchantments with slots in them, right? Now, before we were talking about magical tattoos. What if your body has X amount of slots? You can get little tattoos or you can get big tattoos, and they take more or less slots. They can be powered up or down. They can't really be replaced, but they can be added to.
Okay.
Right. So whatever's there is the base thing. You can't take away what's there. Maybe you can cover over it.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out, because maybe this wasn't in Tasha's and maybe this was my DM, but my DM kind of said something similar, which is like, you can only, obviously you only have so much skin to tattoo, right? So yeah,
exactly.
there is something to it about like the size of the tattoo that you pick,
right?
But
the skill of the artist.
Yeah, the skill of the artist. But yeah, there should be. Boy, now I feel like I really need to read into the mechanics of the magical tattoos a little bit more so I can speak to this. But yeah, I like that idea.
Anyway, sorry, that was another sidetrack, and I did just think of it, so I had to get it out. Sorry.
There's a tattoo
Avery said there's a system
like
this in the GM binder.
Yeah. Oh.
Thank you, Avery. I would love to read that. That is awesome.
Yes, please. Okay, so going back to like gambling or festival games, right? So like there's a card game called 21, which is like, I think you get dealt so many cards, and then now you're kind of like bluffing against other people. Maybe you're not bluffing. I can't remember. But like, yeah. So I figure you can do that with dice and say like, okay, you pay your gold, whatever gold it is, for the ante, and that goes to the house, and then you have 3d6 that you roll, and you're trying to get to 21. Now, if you need another card, you pay for another die, and then you get to roll that, and you can keep paying for another die, and you can keep rolling that, but you're trying to get to 21 without going over 21. Boom. There's already one mini game, one gambling game, one whatever you want to call it, poker game, in-game, that you can do. I think I saw someone do... Was it Don't Break the Ice? Have you ever seen that board game, Don't Break the Ice?
No, I haven't.
It's like there's a plastic stand that has little white blocks that are held together in the middle just by tension alone, and then you have a little hammer that you can like poke at one of the blocks and it falls, but now you have less tension on all the other blocks. So everybody takes turns poking a block out, and you're trying to not... It's like Jenga, where you're trying not to be the person to like knock everything out.
Right. Gotcha.
So you could even... maybe this isn't a festival game. Now I'm starting to think this is more of a... I can use this in an encounter where they're walking across a lake of ice and they don't know, if they're going to fall through or not. And so as they walk through, they have to like tap and
It's a puzzle trap.
Yeah, it's a puzzle trap. We can go back to that. Yeah, I don't know. There's a few different games. I'm trying to think of like a phone game like that could somehow become a downtime activity.
Right.
I don't know. Anyway, yeah, just for festival. There's a lot of online resources for festival games anyway, because tons of people have done it. But anyway, I guess that's it. I didn't really have a lot of ideas. Downtime's hard because it's just people kind of just start making stuff.
Things
up on
like
the fly.
running businesses and stuff, is something that occasionally happens. Someone's trying to run a tavern, or that's the most obvious one. But I mean, underworld type stuff as well. And outside of D&D, and again, my experience is always freaking Vampire the Masquerade. It's the only thing I can talk to, unfortunately. But you do get a lot of that type of stuff in there, where players have resources and they want to know how. Like, one of my characters had an idea. One of my players had this. I thought it was brilliant, actually. He wanted to. The thing is, with the blood mechanics in Vampire, if you drink dead blood, it doesn't give you anything. In fact, it can make you sick. It's like in Anne Rice's novels. You can't drink dead blood. So vampires often get into when they get into fights, and when big dangerous things happen, they often need a supply of fresh blood. And so you can't just go around drinking the blood off the street. People notice that sort of thing,
right?
And that causes all sorts of issues with the masquerade and so on. He came up with this idea of creating a hospital where they take people who have come into the hospital, in having ghoul doctors that work for the company, so to speak, who induce comas into these people. And then they drive these individuals in an ambulance in a coma to the location where somebody calls up and says, we need blood here now. So they drive a coma patient who's, been induced into a coma to the location so that they have fresh blood. So it's basically like Meals on Wheels.
It's like a DoorDash.
right. It's a service they're providing the service to other vampires. And so it's actually a really clever idea within the mechanics of the game. And he kind of wants to know about, how is this business developing? He's trying to sell it as a franchise to other cities and princes and countries, and that type of thing. So there's this whole other thing going on that's really nothing to do with the plot, but it's, it can involve the plot. There is certainly plot elements that can come back into the story from that.
Yeah.
If you've got a business or something, you're going to run into business rivals. This could create a situation where you bump into some antagonist somehow that initially you don't even know about, but there happens to be some gangster that doesn't like your activities and decides to burn your fucking workshop down or something, and this can create plot.
Or you run into the law, or yeah, that's great.
Okay, well, that's what I have for today.
Okay, well, folks, I think we did the show. We did the thing. So I'm just going to take this moment to remind you all that if you like our content, if you want to share with your friends, we would greatly appreciate it. It helps us out as we're trying to grow this show and grow this channel. So yeah, come check us out on our website. We have some things on sale. You can help us out by checking us out on all the socials, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok. And when our podcast gets posted to all the podcasting platforms, you can find it on Amazon, Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and our website, I think.
Yeah.
So
indeed.
Yes, and then come find us on Discord, because we love to chat with people and we're always sharing ideas, and it's just a bunch of creatives. So come find us on Discord and hang out.
Yeah. And if you're looking to hire a professional dungeon master, come and find me online as well. You can click on my Facebook link and follow the things, because it's not that hard. I'm not even going to give you directions. In fact, this is a quest. It's a quest.
We're giving it to you for your downtime.
Yeah, that's your downtime quest. Make an investigation check.
Yeah.
I'll give you advantage.
That would be an interesting show if we could have people just start rolling for something. Like, we need to come up with an idea, so people would have to roll dice and tell us in the chat what they rolled.
Right. That's a cool idea.
I don't know what we'd use it for, but somebody in the chat, help us think that out. Anyway.
Right. If you roll a natural 20, you can make us, I don't know, eat cake or something.
Ooh, Oh no. Yeah, I'm getting ideas now. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. All right. Let's not go down that rabbit hole right now. All right, folks. We will catch you all next week. I just want to remind you guys that these days are fun days when you talk nerdy with friends. So, all right. We'll see you all next week.
Yep.
Bye.
Zaijian. Goodbye. Adios.